At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Jersey.
Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah. 97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
It is a happy hour Friday starting off. Holy moly. We get into a Friday edition of the Sports Bash live at Charlie's in Summers Point. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning producing today's show. You out there on a Friday edition. It's really hot out today, Josh. I'm really coming out from outside, inside to Charlie's. It was beautiful out. Feels like a summer day, and it felt like a summer night last night in New York as the Mets just absolutely torched and pounded Taijuan Walker all over the yard last night. So we'll start with that. We'll look at the Eagles and the Saints. We got Joel Embiid signing a contract extension. But I saw so many people on social media last night just absolutely incensed and complaining about Taijuan Walker. And I think it's always interesting to pontificate about the thoughts on, what did Rob Thompson say after the game last night? It was the great answer. He asked the reporter last night, basically, what did you want me to do? Who did you want me to pitch? And the reporter, no answer. Like, he finally gave you the option, the opportunity to give your opinion on what you thought the manager should have done last night, and the guy had no answer.
Because there is no answer, Mike.
Well, we know that. We've been telling you that here for a while. There is no answer. You get Kobe Allard. Why didn't they throw him? Tyler Phillips had his chance. Seth Johnson came up. The answer to the question is you're not going to win every single game. I think the Phillies are well aware of that. And, last night they get questioned, why did you send him back out there in the fourth? Rob Thompson answered the question. Well, I didn't want to go through my bullpen. We play 6 days in a row. I don't want to have a day where I had to throw a guy last night in the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, the eighth, the ninth inning. And then all of a sudden, the next day, what happens if I need those guys Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday? He has to look at the big picture. Sometimes you have to live the fight another day. And in this situation, I think he looked at it and said, look, no matter who I pitch here today, we're probably going to be up against it. No matter who I choose today, I'm probably going to be dealt a lousy hand. You can have a situation where you throw Colby Allard out there, and maybe Colby gets you through the fourth or fifth inning, and then you're in that spot. Unlikely. Last time Colby Allard pitched against the Mets on Saturday, didn't go so well for Colby. Taijuan Walker came in. Now, listen, I'm not advocating to ever pitch Taijuan Walker on any day of the week, but you don't really have options in this situation. It's like, they demoted him, and then every guy who pitched after him lost. It goes to the whole thing. We assume if we would have done something different than they did, that it would have worked out. I don't really think that Colby Allard or Seth Johnson or Tyler Phillips pitching last night, they were going to win that game. I don't know that was going to be the case. So why can't we just sometimes say, look, tonight, I don't want to say it's a scheduled loss, but I think the Phillies kind of understood that, all right, we don't want to go through 7 bullpen arms in this game. Now, I do understand the frustration that the Phillies last night, their offense gave them some runs. They were able to score some runs. They kind of stayed in the game. They were kind of doing all these things to kind of get back. And then, at one point it was 9-6 on that double by Bryce Harper. And you felt like, man, they're kind of like right in this game. But unfortunately, Taijuan Walker, let's start with how bad he was last night. 4 home runs he gave up. And it wasn't just the 4 home runs that he gives up. It's the fact that it's like batting practice home runs. They're like majestic home runs. It felt like home run derby. You're throwing a pitch, and these guys are teeing off and hitting them into the upper decks, and the lights are going off. I mean, it's a scene, man. Now, you don't feel bad for Walker. He's making $18 million, but you do feel bad for Walker because here's a guy who is on the mound. And in the moment that he's on the mound, I think he's realizing, I'm not too good anymore. After the game, he had some really revealing things to say. He said, it was the best I ever felt, at least this season. That comment right there is the reason why you never listen to anyone say, I'm in the best shape I've ever been in.
It's true.
Because Taijuan Walker last night had the audacity. Now, listen, Walker hasn't always been a bum. Walker hasn't always been a
He was
stiff.
an all-star in 2021.
He was an all-star. He was good enough that Dave Dombrowski gave him a monster contract, which is now turning out to be a disaster. But, look, Taijuan Walker last year in the summer of July, those months, June, July, he was the Phillies' best pitcher. Now, I am not advocating at all. If I'd never see Taijuan Walker pitch ever again in my life, and if I didn't have to watch him from the start of this season on, like, for my money, they should have just shut him down, said he had something wrong with him, and that's it. I wrote about this a month ago. The Walker issue is a Dave Dombrowski issue. Now, last night, Charlie Manuel, Rob Thompson said, my fault, okay? We threw him, and it didn't work out. We were hoping it went better, and it didn't, and I left him out there. Because he got asked the question. I think we have some of this audio. Why did you let him go back out there in the 4th inning? Which I think is a fair question. I'm not saying that you're idiotic for thinking that they should have taken him out of the game. But the question is, why would you let him go out there in the 4th inning? And, Thompson's answer is as predictable as you can come. I wanted to save the bullpen. And you're thinking, fine, he got ripped. But generally when Walker gets knocked around, it's that 1st inning of the game, and then he kind of settles in. When he came in relief the other day, he had pitched pretty well. He had pitched pretty well for, the first 2 innings, and then he kind of fell apart in that last inning. I think if he would have just taken him out in the 3rd, the Phillies probably have a better shot to win that game. I'm not disputing that at all. I think what why do I keep saying Charlie? What Rob Thompson is saying is, look, it's one of those days where we just wanted to save the bullpen. Do we have that Rob Thompson audio where he kind of explained why he was asked a question about why they sent Walker out in the 3rd inning of the game? Here's what Rob Thompson had to say about that.
Why does he go back out there for the 4th inning?
I'm not going to burn the bullpen. I think it's just case by case. And 2 of our right-handers, if we use them tonight, they're down tomorrow.
Right.
And it was a down game the whole game. Every time we scored, they answered. So we're constantly down.
He doesn't want to burn the bullpen is the answer. Why did he go back out there in that inning? I don't want to burn the bullpen. I have no problem with that answer, looking at the big picture. He knows he's not winning every night. I know I have Walker out there. Again, this goes to people say, this is Thompson's fault. He should have taken him out. To which my answer would be, Taijuan Walker is not pitching in the playoffs, so these decisions don't have to be made. This is not a playoff decision last night. That decision last night is not a playoff decision. That decision last night is, hey, I'm in a horrible spot. You're giving me Taijuan Walker, or you're giving me Kobe Allard, or you're giving me Seth Johnson, or you're giving me Tyler Phillips, and I have to find a way to get those guys to at least get me through the 4th inning so I don't have to burn through multiple bullpen arms. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. We've got how many games left? 3 here with the Mets, and
Yep.
then 6, I think, after that, so 9.
I believe it's 9.
So you got 9 games
Because you
left.
got the 3 series set with the Cubs next week.
Yeah. All right, so what else we got from Thompson here?
Well, the other part is what you mentioned earlier, Mike, is, when the reporter starts trying to ask him about going to somebody else and Thompson's answer. And I thought, I love the way he answers it because I felt like I was listening to Mike Gill on the radio. I felt like it was the conscious of Mike Gill being channeled through Rob Thompson in this moment.
In your mind, it just wasn't the spot in the 4th inning there?
To our leverage guys?
No, just to get someone else in there.
Who?
I don't know.
I mean, those guys that are low leverage guys, and I don't really want. And we've got a game tomorrow. We got a game in 6 days in a row. So you start using all those guys up, then what happens tomorrow if you get down? Mm-hmm. So it just didn't work out.
Yep.
My fault.
My fault. I love the my fault at the end, too. It's almost like...
Like, what else do you want me to say is what he's saying.
Well, he said, listen, did you want me to put a high-leverage pitcher into that situation? Like, did you want me to use Hoffman? Did you want me to use Strom? Did you want me to use, one of my closers in the 4th inning of the game last night? And he's like, who did you want me to use? What did you want me to do?
And the guy says, I don't know.
I don't know. That's his answer. I don't know. That's and that answer right there is the fans' answer. I don't want this guy to pitch. Well, who do you want to pitch? Well, I don't care. Somebody else. I just don't want that guy. And listen, I could be okay with that. I don't want Taijuan Walker pitching either, but I honestly don't have, what we love doing, what I love to do is tell you what I think the team should do, and that doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but I at least have something to say in that Walker shouldn't pitch, this guy should. I honestly don't have another guy that should pitch. Not that I want Walker to pitch. I just don't have another answer for you. I don't have another guy to give you. And that goes back to Dombrowski. Who could he have pitched last night? Kobe Allard is the answer that everybody defaults to. He was not good his last time out, so they decided to flip them this time. This time, Allard was poor on Saturday, and Walker was solid on Saturday. So what did he do? He flipped them. And he said, my bad. All right? So I don't understand why. We always have the feeling. And, yes, Walker has been awful. Kobe Allard's career has been terrible. He's been awful, okay? So we have the feeling that because we saw Kobe Allard pitch well 2 times, that he's the answer. And you might say, look, he was better than Walker. And I'm not going to argue with you. Fine. If Kobe Allard pitched last night, I wasn't going to be like, what a terrible decision. The point is, neither guy is ideal, and you don't have any other options. So tonight, you got to hope to bounce back. And here's one problem. So far, you haven't been bouncing back against this Mets team. This Mets team, I feel like, and you beat you beat them last weekend in Citizens Bank Park. But this Mets team, no Lindor last night. I thought Severino threw pretty well for the early in the game, and then they kind of got to him. But the Mets team is playing to try to get into the playoffs. They are trying to get into that wild card right now. And the big picture part of this is, are the Mets the team that the Phillies have been? Are the Mets the team that is the scary team if they actually get into the playoffs, like the Phillies have been the last couple of years?
I mean, I think they're a scrappy team, Mike, that would scare a lot of people. They kind of do remind you a little bit of last year's Diamondbacks, right?
You look at that team and you say, you know what? They are playing a lot of meaningful games late in the year, much like the Phillies did a couple of years ago, the last 2 years. They played a lot of meaningful games the last couple of years. And if they get in, they're going to play in the wild card round, so they're going to play those 2 or 3 games, and they're going to have that momentum. They talked about this on the broadcast last night, that the Braves had said in spring training about the playoff format. Did you hear this conversation between Smoltz and
yeah.
Yeah.
Was that Jason Benetti last night?
Benetti was the play-by-player last night. So Smoltz had said that Snedeker made a comment that the Phillies took offense to. and that he felt, the Phillies felt that Snedeker was being somewhat disrespectful to the Phillies in the last 2 years in winning the series against the Braves because they felt that the Braves were making an excuse that not playing and having to sit for those couple days was in part the reason why they lost the series, right?
Right.
But is Snedeker off base on that? Like, if you sit out those 5 days or however long it may be, and then the Mets win their series. Now, you're not going to play the Mets. You're probably going to play the Diamondbacks or the Padres the way it's set up right now.
Correct.
But it could change between now and the end. I don't know what the standings. I thought the Mets were tied. I don't know.
I'm
what
pulling up the full standings right now.
Right. But I'm pretty sure it was the Padres and the Diamondbacks who were matched up in the first round right now. We'll see if that changes. But anyway, if those two teams play in a wild card series and you're sitting around, do you feel comfortable and confident that you're able to just rise from the ashes and that you're just flat out a better baseball team and you're going to be able to flip it on? They were talking about last night.
Right now, by the way, it would be the Brewers versus the Diamondbacks and the Padres versus the Mets in the wild card round.
And who would be – now the Phillies are the 1 seed, right?
So the Phillies would get the lowest remaining seed coming out of that.
And right now, that is which matchup?
Well, the matchups are Brewers and Diamondbacks. So who do you think wins that?
That's not my question. My question is, which of those matchups would play the top seed?
The lowest remaining team.
Yeah, but don't the two teams that are the lowest play, the two top ones play each other, and then the lowest one plays the division champion?
The top two records get a bye in the wild card.
Right,
so
right.
The Phillies and Dodgers
teams,
are
the
out.
Phillies and Dodgers, they're going to get the bye.
So the Brewers, who are the
Brewers are
third,
playing then the worst wild card team.
Correct, which is right now, as of time, probably the Diamondbacks.
All right, so if the Diamondbacks were to win that series, they would be the team that plays the Phillies.
Correct.
But if the winner of the other series,
which is the Padres
and the
and
Brewers
Mets,
win, then you would play the winner of that series.
Correct.
Okay, so
I guess the question is, do you think the Diamondbacks can beat the Brewers?
Well, the question is, those 4 teams that are in the wild card matchups, the Brewers, the Padres, the Mets, and the Diamondbacks, and if you want to throw the Braves in there, I think they're like 2
Braves
back
are 2
right
games
now.
back.
Okay, so they're 2 back. So they're kind of hanging around still. But the 4 teams that are currently in there, the question I would have is, do you feel that you are so much better than those 4 teams that sitting around for a week is a positive or a negative?
It's a negative.
That's what the Braves felt. The
Exactly.
Braves, and I said this from the beginning of the year. Now, the Braves had so many injury problems, but I said at the beginning of the year, I don't think the Braves are all that interested in winning the division this year. Like, I don't think they were going to go pedal to the metal to try to win the division this year. I think they were just okay with being, hey, we're in the playoffs, and let us try to play as the wild card team and see how that goes. Now, they lost Spencer Strider, they lost Ronald Acuna, they lost Ozzie Albies for a while here, they lost a third baseman for a while. So they've had some injury issues
Austin Riley, right,
that are kind of out of their control. But their message has been, we didn't like being the team. Now, they talked about it last night. The only time, and I thought Smoltz brought up a good point here, the only time that you have that layoff, and everybody has the layoff, is at the All-Star break. But you have enough time after the All-Star break. Like, in other words, if you get off to a slow start, you have enough time to kind of find your way and get back. You don't have that time in the playoffs. So if you're rusty for the first 2 or 3 games and your timing's off because you've been sitting around, you don't have the luxury of 3 more months of baseball to kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know what you're saying, but I hate to let you know, Mike, but the text board I don't think fully understands what you're saying. It's 609-403-0970, because you got some texts here that we got to get to that I don't think people fully understand what you're trying to say, Mike, because Glenn in Northfield chimed in and says, I'm exhausted of the Walker garbage. I wanted a bullpen game last night.
Can't do a bullpen game, Glenn. You can't do a bullpen game. And Thompson said it afterwards. we have a game Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We have 6 games in a row. He said, what if we need those guys tonight and tomorrow to try to win this series? At this stage of the season, it's tough to throw a bullpen game and expect that you're going to have enough quality, fresh arms. Sometimes you just have to say, look, the 5th spot in our rotation just isn't good enough.
Right.
Okay? We are acknowledging that. By throwing a bullpen game, now you're using to get through a bullpen game. Okay? Which, to the most part, you're trying to do last night anyway. I think you're almost trying to do a bullpen game, but you're trying to get the first guy to give you 4. Right?
Right.
That first guy in the bullpen game, Glenn is saying, okay, who could have started the bullpen game last night? I mean, they've started Kerkering in the past. Well, I think Kerkering has elevated himself where he's not the opener.
He's a high leverage guy now.
Anymore. Right, he's a high leverage guy now. So he's not starting a bullpen game. So what are you going to start? Jose Ruiz? So he starts the first inning. Well, how did he come in last night and pitch? Not very well.
No.
Kobe Allard is the other guy people want to see. Fine. You want to start Kobe Allard. I don't know that makes anybody feel any better. Kobe Allard has a career ERA of almost 7. All right? 7.
Well, Stephen EHT disagrees, Mike, at 609-403-0973. She says, hey, Mike, if you go back and watch Kobe Allard's last start, there were 2 terrible plays that changed the start altogether. Martian Turner had errors. Allard is good enough to get you 4 to 5 outs in an inning.
His history suggests he's not, Steve. I'm sorry. You can tell me that, and sure, okay, they didn't play well behind him on Saturday. His career ERA, and he's pitched a lot. It's not like he has 5 starts in the majors. He's pitched multiple. I don't know exactly how many games he has pitched, and maybe you can find that real fast for me. But Kobe Allard's ERA for his career is near 7. The sample size on Kobe Allard is not good. So if you want to be the guy that wants to die on the Kobe Allard hill, God bless you.
Allard has 42 career starts.
Okay, so 42 career starts. His ERA is 5.94.
Yep.
If that's the guy that you really want to pound the table for, Steve, you're a better man than me. I can't say, you know who I really have a lot of faith in? A guy in 48 starts who's got a career ERA of 5.94.
Right.
And I know if I pitch him, that's the guy. Steve, I'll have a beer with you, but I'm not sure it's just tasting the same. Come on, dude. Last year in Atlanta, his ERA was 6.57. His ERA in Texas the year before that was 7.29. The year before that in Texas, it was 5.41. He was 3-12 with a 5.41 ERA. The year before that, he was 0-6 with a 7.75 ERA. And that's the guy you're trying to pitch to me, Steve?
Mike, really quick, I pulled up his splits. So if you only take his 42 starts, he has a 5.85 ERA. So it's not like him being a starter versus reliever is making a difference. As a starter, 42 games, 5.85 ERA.
Yeah, he's just not good. He pitched a couple good games for you. I get it. It all evens out, man. Tyler Phillips threw a complete game shutout. Do you want him pitching, Steve? I don't hear you lobbying for Tyler Phillips. What else you got?
Well, I was going to say that I think part of the problem is, someone like Steve, he keeps harping on the fact that Taijuan Walker is not good enough. He's blowing up a text board here, but he keeps, and it's like, I think the problem is, Mike, people like Steve and EHC, not to put words in his mouth, but it seems like that these people look at Walker as a waste, and they overlook the fact that as Rob Thompson,
too, by the way.
As Rob Thompson said, who else do you want me to pitch?
I look at him as a waste. I don't know, waste is whatever word you want to use. I think Walker stinks. I wouldn't use him at all. Here's the problem that people don't want to put into the equation. When you're a fan, you don't want to cognitively think. You just want what you want. Here's the problem. He makes $18 million. Factor that into the decision. All right? Now, he's still on my roster, and I told you this before. Unless Dombrowski DFAs him, and he's still in that clubhouse, he's got to be used for $18 million. And that is why he is out there last night. Hey, don't forget the Phillies and the Mets. Saturday and Sunday, you can listen to the game on 97.3 ESPN. We'll talk to Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City and get his thoughts on, does he think that it was the right decision last night to go back to Walker? We're live at Charlie's. They're having the 6th annual Jack Thomas Memorial on Monday, October the 28th. Come on out and sign up for that. It's $175 per golfer scramble. And the money benefits the Mainland Youth Sports and Recreation programs right here at Charlie's in Summers Point. Bud Light specials. Thanks to Bud Light. It's Happy Hour Friday. This is our last Happy Hour Friday show, so stop out this Friday. Pop on out. We got 99 bottles. I think we got 10 slots today. 10 slots that people can fill out for this year's 99 bottles party. We got that. And the Eagles and the Saints, we'll get into that too. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, doubtful for the game. He was a DNP yesterday. We'll get the latest from John McMullen at 3 o'clock. More Sports Bash live at Charlie's in Summers Point here on 97.3 ESPN.
It's the Sports Bash.
O'Reilly! You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
It hasn't been a good year for me. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I've been working hard and doing everything I need to do, and the results just ain't coming from me right now. And, I thought there was a little bit more uptick today, but didn't execute, didn't get ahead. When I got 2 strikes, they put guys away, and so just not getting done right now at all.
That was Taijuan Walker last night stating the obvious. He wasn't very good. He hasn't been very good. He did say it's the best he felt ever. And then he kind of was like, all year, at least. The Walker thing we thought was gone, Mike McGarry, but it was back last night. Did the Phillies make a mistake going back there? Does it not really matter? Did they have another option? Is it a bad message to the team? What do you make of the way that game went last night? And look, it's, not only did he pitch bad, I mean, it was home run derby last night. And you just say, look, how much, you only have, 9 games left. But that game last night with Walker, would you have gone back to Walker or done something different?
Well, I was standing right next to Taijuan Walker up there in New York last night when he made that statement that we just heard, and you could see that this season is kind of worn on him and is really taking a toll on him. I know fans don't really want to hear that right now. Look, he's a problem that it's over. I mean, the 5th starter has one more start coming on Tuesday. They've got to survive that start. And then I highly doubt that Taijuan Walker will be back with the Phillies next year. It's just too much of a distraction, whether they release him or trade him or do something with him. I don't think you can bring him back next year. And it's a problem that's not going to impact you in the postseason at all. The one thing I will find peculiar last night is that game was 4-3 entering the bottom of the 4th inning. Mm-hmm. And I was surprised that Rob Thompson sent Walker back out there. At that point, the Phillies had the momentum. They had scored in the 2nd and 3rd innings to cut the lead. They had the momentum. They were in. It was a 1-run game. They had an opportunity to win the game, and it seemed like Rob gave us one of those old, Doc Rivers scheduled loss games last night. I don't understand why he went back to Walker in that 4th inning. Why not try to win the game only down a run with the momentum at that point?
Yeah, I and his answer was, look, I got to save the bullpen. We play 6 games in a row. Go ahead.
But you've got a chance to win that game, so why not try? It's almost like he said, I'm not going to try to win this game because I'm going to try to win Saturday, or I'm going to try to win tonight. I mean, you're in that game. You have the momentum. Why not? You're only down a run. Why not throw? Ruiz ended up coming in the 4th inning. Why not just put him in the 4th inning? See if he can throw a scoreless inning and then see what happens. And maybe you take the lead in the top of the 5th, and then you can go to your leverage guys at that point. But just seemed to be peculiar how they wrote the game off so early in the game, only trailing by 1 run.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and the Walker thing, he's generally had like one blow-up inning. Like, it's like, oh, he'll throw 2 good innings, and then the third inning is the one that gets him. I guess there's that element of, all right, he kind of got hit around, but maybe he's now settled into this game, and I don't want to go to my bullpen. That being said, he was not good, and the reporter, I don't know who it was, said, why'd you go for him there, and who did you want me to pitch, was what he said, essentially, and the reporter didn't really have an answer. That's the issue, is they don't really have an option, and that's why Walker keeps getting thrown out there. A lot of it, I would imagine, Mike, has to do with that $18 million price tag.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they were going to give him every chance sign him to a 4-year, $72 million contract, before last season, and he wins 15 games last year. Yeah, as far as who they could have gone to, I think Rob caught us a little off guard by saying, well, who would you have gone to? But they have 13 pitchers in that bullpen. I mean, Colby Allred came in and threw 2 innings. Tyler Banks is out there. There are guys out there that could have come in that spot. Like I said, Ruiz came in the 4th inning anyway. Go to Ruiz in the 4th inning, and it maybe gets you through a scoreless inning, and then maybe you take the lead in the 5th, and then you can go to your leverage guys. I think that Taijuan Walker, look, it's not going to impact this team in the postseason at all. I don't think he's going to be back with the Phillies in spring training in Clearwater. I don't think that would do him any good. Yeah, I don't see it. I think it would be too much of a distraction. Every time he pitches, it would be what's the velocity, what's the splitter. I don't know if they're going to eat the $36 million or, include him in a trade or play most of his salary to ship him off. I don't think you can bring him back. That's how bad this season has been. It would be too much of a distraction for him and the team going forward.
Yeah, keep in mind, Mike, you mentioned it. They owe him 2 more years, $36 million. Yeah, that's not good. I got a lot of people, they're texting in Colby Allard. Why didn't he start? Listen, Colby Allard's a guy who has a career ERA of almost 6. So people are acting like that would have solved all their issues. Right. Hey, if they would have gone with Allard last night, great. At some point, the Allard pixie dust wears off too. So I think you said it at the beginning. They just don't have a great 5th option right now, and they got to hope that those 2 starts, last night and the next one, aren't the 2 that do them in.
Yeah, it don't cost them, the top seed in the National League. I think they're in good shape to get at least, 1 or 2, but you hope that doesn't catch, what happened last night doesn't cost them the top seed. And look, they went to Walker on basically a hunch. I mean, he threw 3 shutout innings against the Mets on Saturday. They said somebody's got to pitch this game. Walker has had past success against this team. Let's throw him out there. They threw him out there, and like you said, it was glorified batting practice.
Yeah, how much it was. You were there last night. I mean, the balls were these were Titanic blasts that Alonso hit that bomb. I mean, it was just, I felt bad for the guy at some point. And he's a guy who's had success. He's been an all-star, and he's like, I just don't have it anymore. Like, you're watching a guy, Mike, a professional, in real time, have the realization that he just doesn't have it anymore.
Yeah, and when we spoke with him in the clubhouse, after we spoke with Rob, we walk in the clubhouse, and he's right there in front of his locker waiting for us, and we go over, and you could sense, I don't know if the readers could get a sense or the listeners could get a sense of, from just listening to him talk, but just being next to him, his body language, the way he talks, it's bothering him. It's wearing on him. It's really taking a toll on him. And like I asked Rob last night, it's almost inconceivable that this guy, who, let's remember, won 15 games last year and pitched okay, has now had one of the worst years of a starting pitcher in Philadelphia Phillies history. I mean, 3-7 with a 6.91 ERA. With more than 80 innings pitched. From what I understand, you got to go back to 1930 to find pitchers on the Phillies who have had worse years than that. So it's really, it's almost inconceivable that he's been this bad.
And Mike, you mentioned it. This guy last year, you can make an argument that he kept them in the race in the summer last year. He was probably their best pitcher in a couple of months last year. You go to June, he had 6 starts. He was 5-1 with a 1.50 ERA. I mean, you think about that. He had 6 starts. He was 5-1 with a 1.50 ERA and a 0.889 WHIP. Those are Cy Young type of numbers.
Yeah, and his track record of success even before that, the reason why the Phillies gave him 4 years, $72 million is his 2 years with the Mets, right? He threw more than 150 innings both years. He was an all-star one of those years. It's amazing just how quickly he has sort of fallen off a cliff here. And it's stunning to the Phillies, and I think it's stunning to him. But like I said, it's a problem that is not going to, you're not going to win or lose in the playoffs because of Taijuan Walker.
No, and that's what I think, people judge night to night and not big picture. Taijuan Walker will not be on the playoff roster, and he will never throw a pitch in the playoffs. If you wanted Kobe Allard to throw last night, fine. You could have had somebody like that throw. The last time Allard threw, he did not pitch very well, and the Phillies decided, hey, let's just see if we flip the script here, and it did not work. But like you said, Walker will not be on the playoff roster, and that's it. The big thing was they talked about this on the broadcast last night. Smoltz talked about the Snedeker comment that kind of, ticked the Phillies off a little bit in that they don't like the playoff setup. But if you're the Phillies, do you like the playoff setup?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I think you got to like I absolutely like the playoff setup where they are right now. They've obviously got – the thing about the playoffs is it's such a random situation, it seems like, with baseball, right? Teams that win 100 games can kind of fade away in the postseason, as the Braves have done. Teams that have won 80-something games, like the Phillies in 2022, like the Arizona Diamondbacks, can get hot and go all the way to the World Series. I think right now what the Phillies just have to do is get one of those top 2 seeds and minimize the amount of games you have to win a World Series. Even skipping the wild card series, taking that number from 13 down to 11. That's what they have to do right now. The less games you have to win, the less random stuff can happen. And the big thing that the Phillies should be worried about right now is, the strikeouts. 16 strikeouts in the 2 games in Milwaukee, 12 strikeouts last night. That's been their, Achilles heel in the postseason last year and the year before. And, it looms large. This lineup has a tendency to swing and miss and chase. When they're all hot together, there's not a better lineup in baseball, but they can go ice cold, they can chase, and they can have games where they strike out 15, 16 times. And that is what fans should be worrying about, not, Kobe Allred or Taijuan Walker.
Did anybody ask Rob why they switched Bohm and Castellanos back?
Yeah, he just was waiting for Bohm to just sort of kind of get his sea legs under him when he came back a couple days into the lineup. So I guess Castellanos cooled off a little bit. Bohm started to look good. They gave Bohm a few days to kind of acclimate himself back, and then they put him back in the 4 hole where he's hit most of the season. So it was just a matter of wanting to give Bohm a couple of days to sort of readjust to the action. And that, combining with the fact that Castellanos cooled off a little bit, is why they made that move.
All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. The Eagles take on the Saints. Are you a believer in this Saints team? How dangerous do you think they are at New Orleans this weekend?
Well, I will get a look at them this Sunday, right, and absolutely take a look at them. There's been no better offense in football the first 2 weeks of the season, and, they get to go against an Eagles defense that did not exactly distinguish themselves on Monday night. So looks like a bad matchup for the Eagles, but I'm not going to, bet the house on the Saints becoming the 72 Dolphins or something. So, or Air Coryell down there or something like that. So I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit on that one. The big thing I want to see out of this Eagles game, Mike, is before the season started, my big question to all Eagles fans and everybody was, tell me why the beginning of this season is going to be different than the end of last season. And so far, in my mind, it hasn't been. You've had inconsistent play at the quarterback spot, which has led to inconsistent offensive play, and you've seen a defense that has really, really struggled and given up big drive after big drive, and a team, because of that has blown leads late in the fourth quarter again and again and again. So, again, my thing was, why is this season going to be different than last season? And so far, it hasn't been.
Defense has been a big problem, and they have a big problem with the Saints offense on Sunday. We'll talk more about that. Joel Embiid gets a 3-year extension, $192.9 million max deal. So now he's up to $299 million. Did the Sixers need to make this deal? Did they need to sign this extension now? He's here now for 5 more seasons. Good deal, or would you have waited?
Good deal. I mean, I don't know what choice the 76ers had. If they want to maintain, they built a team that they think is capable of winning a championship, that they're all in on trying to win a championship. If you're all in, you're going to sign Embiid. So I don't see the choice that the Sixers had with the current philosophy of trying to win a championship right now, which I agree with 110%. And as far as the numbers, they're just mind-boggling, funny money numbers. The NBA cap is going to go up, even more in the next year or so with these new TV deals and stuff like that. So the money you're going to see these players getting is going to be astronomical, especially in a sport like basketball where there's only, 15 guys on a roster and only a couple superstars. So to me, the Eagles have to go all in with Joel Embiid. They're all in with him. So, why not pay him the money? And the dollar figure boggles our minds. But it's just funny money because the NBA cap is going up. And wait till you see the numbers of some of the other deals that players are going to get. So I don't think you get caught up in the money is what I'm saying.
You jump out ahead of it, right? You jump out ahead of it before the market gets reset and you have to, go even bigger. Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City. Where are you going tonight?
Headed over to Camden. Big game, Holy Spirit at Camden. Holy Spirit has won 2 straight back-to-back shutouts after opening up the season with the loss to Millville. And Camden, always an impressive football team coming off a big 44-3 win over Shawnee. So an interesting test. You got Camden, a traditional power, against Holy Spirit, a traditional power. 2 teams that I don't know if they've ever played on the gridiron before. So we'll be over there at Farnham Park over there outside of Camden tonight to watch that game tonight. Should be a good one.
All right, Mike McGarry will have coverage in the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com. And Monday, we'll be back looking at the Eagles and the Saints and the Phillies and the Mets. Feeling pretty good as a Met fan right now, huh?
They are rolling, and they are hitting the ball. They are really hitting the ball. So we'll see. Right now tied with Arizona for that number 5 wild card spot, 2 games clear of the Braves. Got a week left, but we'll see what happens. But there's no doubt right now they look like a team with a little mojo or a little karma on their side, basically.
Yeah, they feel like a little Philly-ish there. One of those teams that gets in, plays well late, and then kind of is the team that you're like, I don't want to get stuck facing this team come playoff time. Phillies Mets Saturday and Sunday on 97.3 ESPN. Got Apple TV Plus tonight for those of you who want to watch the game. All right, Mike, we'll talk to you Monday, pal.
All right, we'll see you down the road. Thank you.
Hey, let me tell you about some unbeatable lease offers from my friend Rocco at Key Acura of Atlantic City. Now through September 30th, drive home a 2025 Integra for just $399 a month with $29.95 down. If you need more room, the 2024 RDX all-wheel drive is yours for just $393 a month with $49.95 down. Visit Key Acura of Atlantic City on Tilton Road at EHC, the small but friendly dealer. See dealer for details. We're live at Charlie's in Summers Point. Bud Light specials all throughout the day. And, of course, they got the great wings. I always go chili when I'm here, by the way. I'm a big fan of the Charlie's chili, but the wings are popping. We've already seen a bunch of that. Stop out on a Friday edition of the Sports Bash. John McMullen with the latest on the Eagles at 3 o'clock today. Stick around.
You're listening to the
O'Reilly. You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
with Mike Gill.
And it just keeps getting better.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, back at Charlie's. Don't forget the 6th annual Jack Thomas Memorial. It's Monday, October 28th. It's at Great Bay Country Club. It's a scramble, $175 per golfer. That includes Green fees, a cart, a buffet at Charlie's afterwards, gifts, prizes, registration, shotgun start, buffet dinner. It's all right here on the form. If you stop out at Charlie's, you can sign up. It is Monday, October the 28th at Great Bay Country Club. We're live at Charlie's for a Friday edition of the Sports Bash. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City and PressOfAC.com. Give us his thoughts. The one thing I would, he talked about, they start Walker in that game last night, the Phillies do, which, look, I wouldn't advocate, but I don't really have another option. I don't think that it was necessary to send him back out there in that fourth inning. His answer was, well, we wanted to kind of preserve the bullpen because we play 6 straight days. I can't really rip that answer. If you wanted to take him out and put somebody else in there, Mike saying, hey, you were in that game, you had a shot. Walker's history has suggested that he kind of has a shaky inning and then he kind of settles into the game. So last night didn't seem like that was going to happen. I think they left him in there too long, but I'm not going to sit here, okay, and pound the table for his name is Colby Allard, by the way. People who are actually advocating to pitch the guy, if you're actually lobbying for a guy to pitch, at least know the guy's name. His name is Colby Allard, and he stinks. He stinks, all right? All right, John McMullen, Eagles and Saints, who's in and who's out, plus buy or sell. We'll do a little buy or sell on a Friday with Johnny Mack for the game on Sunday. You can listen to it right here on 97.3 ESPN.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
All right, Hour 2, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. John McMullen's brought to you by Boardwalk Honda. Shop their lineup of new, pre-owned, and certified pre-owned Hondas online, boardwalkhonda.com. This hour of the show, it's brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Broadlee's trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation for generation. Call them at 609-390-3907 as we get ready for the Eagles and Saints. John McMullen, Sports Illustrated, Birds 365, weekday mornings, 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. Joins us now with a little preview, a little look, and some ins and outs on this team. We'll do a little buy or sell on the Fridays with John. What's going on, Johnny Mac?
Hey, Mike. How are you?
I'm good as always, pal. And yesterday you were on, and then afterwards the the injury report came out and started all new scuttlebutt. We had A.J. Brown, which we knew. What do we now know about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and his availability for Sunday?
Well, he wasn't at practice today, at least for the portion that was open to reporters, which is a very brief time on Fridays during a Sunday game week. So he wasn't there, but he was in the locker room and didn't want to talk to us. All he said was, ain't getting the story from me as coach. See you Sunday. So that, can mean he's playing. It can mean he's not playing. Basically,
yeah.
CJ didn't want to talk about it. And that's his right, but wasn't at practice. At least it didn't look like he was at practice. Now, it's a veteran player. Not terribly important for him to, it's not like they're going to rule him out if they think he can play. With AJ, I think it's pretty clear he's not going to play, and I think he'll be ruled out whenever they release the injury report. So CJ's the name to keep an eye on. Just a pure guess. They're probably going to list him as questionable and take it up to game day, but he second straight day wasn't at practice. Now, I was told it's not a serious long-term thing. So in the worst case scenario, he might miss this game and likely return, but still questionable, and he wouldn't confirm either way of what's going on with him for Sunday.
Do we know when this happened? Because he was not, I know Wednesday was an estimation, but he was not on the Wednesday report, and then all of a sudden Thursday. So do we know when this may have occurred?
Yeah, it happened in practice on Wednesday, and it is a walkthrough. But guys get injured. Believe it or not, in the case of he tweaked something in his foot during that particular walkthrough, because it could have been something from the game. He did play in every rep during the game, but as you come out of the game, the thought process maybe a little bit of soreness showed up. But Nick did confirm it did happen in practice on Wednesday, and bad luck. Sometimes those things happen, even in walkthroughs.
John McMullen, Birds 365 and Sports Illustrated. If Chauncey Gardner-Johnson does not play, John, give us the scenarios then, because it sounds like almost chaos.
Yeah, the question Vic Fangio would have to answer is does he want to use multiple moving parts? In theory, the third safety would be Avonte Maddox, but to move him to safety, you would have to start somebody else at nickel corner. He's been doing that for the first two games, and some would argue not effectively, so maybe it's not that big of a deal to move him back. But then you have to open up that question as, okay, what are you going to do there? Do you just start Cooper DeJean, who's now the backup slot? Vic confirmed that. Or do you start Quinyon Mitchell outside, move him inside when you need a slot, and play Isaiah Rodgers outside? So those are the avenues. He can even throw Tristan McCullum. He would be the next safety. Maybe they just throw that to the wind and say, all right, let's give Tristan a shot to play opposite Reed Blankenship. So a number of ways they can go. But yeah, some concern, obviously, if you don't have C.J. Gardner-Johnson, especially for an offense that has been as productive as the Saints. Although they're not really a volume passing team, at least early in the season, they're more of a play-action shot team, Shanahan-Kubiak offense. So they try to set up those shots downfield with Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, the really fast receiver. Shaheed. So, he's averaging like 24 yards a catch. So he's obviously a deep threat guy, and he can run by anybody. And that's the concern. So you got to stop Alvin Kamara. That's number one. And he can beat you both ways. He's a great runner, but he's also a great receiver, so he beats you in multiple ways. And then they want to set up those play-action shots. If you look at last week, so they won the game in Dallas 44-19. Derek Carr threw it 16 times.
Yeah.
Now part of it is they were winning early, so they ran the ball a lot late, and they had a huge lead. So
and Dallas did get back into that. Dallas did get right around half. I mean, they scored. I mean, so it wasn't like it was over. But yeah, I watched most of that game, and you're right. Dallas could not stop the run. And I guess if you're watching what Philadelphia has done against the run, they run. New Orleans does a lot of the same concepts that Atlanta does.
Yeah, exact same concepts, really. A little bit different. They're not going to use as much pistol as Atlanta did, but Atlanta did that week one, and they kind of skewed it back against the Eagles because it didn't work with Kirk Cousins. So that's sort of, Sean McVay's a Shanahan guy as well, but he has sort of evolved it into his own version, and they use more pistol with Matthew Stafford, and the Falcons' offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, came from Sean McVay. So that's the connection there. But the Saints, it's Kyle Kubiak, who's the son of Gary Kubiak, who, is the direct sort of descendant of Mike Shanahan. So he is a traditional Mike Shanahan guy. So you see it with the outside stretch runs. They do that a lot.
Yep.
And you see it with the pure play action, and they do that a lot, and they want to take those shots down the field.
Johnny Max with us here. All right, on these Fridays, we'll try to throw some buy and sell questions pertaining to the game for John. We'll start with this one. The Eagles are 28th in the NFL in defensive efficiency. They are 31st in yards per play allowed. They give up almost 7 yards every single play, and they are 30th in pressure percentage. They ranked last year. They were 29th in defensive efficiency, 24th in yards per play, and 30th in pressure percentage. Buy or sell that this defense is worse than last year's?
I'm gonna sell. It's not worse than last year's because the one thing they can do is situational football. Again, it's a very small sample size, but as weird as those numbers say, they're tied for third in third down defense, and they're fifth in red zone defense. So they've been very good situationally. And I think if you look at the Eagles' defense last year, the biggest thing of all those bad numbers, the biggest thing of all was they couldn't get off the field on third down. They just could not get off the field. And this year, weirdly, with similar numbers, they've at least been able to get off the field quite a bit on third down.
And they've been good in the red zone for the most part.
Yeah, and they're fifth. Yeah, they're fifth in red zone. Now, of course, it didn't work against Kirk Cousins and Drake London late, but overall, and again, 2 weeks, fifth is pretty good, and third and third down defense is pretty good as well. So at least they're doing a few things well. So I'm going to sell on that one.
Are you surprised at those numbers? 28th in NFL defensive deficiency, 31st in yards per play. They give up 6.9 yards per play, and they're 30th in pressure percentage. Are you surprised when I give you those numbers?
Yeah. I mean, well, I'm not surprised because I know them, but yeah, if you would have told me before, yeah, I would have been surprised. I wouldn't, yeah. I mean, it's been a perfect storm of everybody playing bad at once, and you don't expect that to happen. You had a little bit of a spike from Zach Baun in the opener, and Reed Blankenship played very well. Against Atlanta, it's crazy. They only gave up 15 points in the first 58 minutes of the game, but they didn't play well. They couldn't stop the run. I think Atlanta was more conservative because of what went on in week one, and they're not completely sold on if Kirk Cousins is healthy. So I think part of it was self-inflicted, not trying to push it when it came to passing the football. So part of it was that. I look at the individuals, and I said, well, boy, they gave up a lot of yardage against Green Bay, and they gave up a lot of points. But I still said certain guys played well. Can't really point to many guys playing well against Atlanta, and that's a concern, to say the least. And my biggest concern, I've said it pretty consistently, is Jalen Carter, and the reason why is because he's their best player, and he's got to play like their best player. And he's not playing well, and that I can't figure out because he's got too much talent not to play well. And I got to talk to Jalen after practice today, and he's very, accountable, which was good to see. He's not happy. He called his own play trash. That's the word he used, not me. So he's got a very high standard for himself. That's a good thing. He knows he's not playing up to what he's supposed to play, and hopefully light some fire under him, and you see a different guy. Problem is this Saints offensive line is very good. This has been certainly one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, as you can imagine, over the first 2 weeks because of how much production they've had. But as Vic Fangio also pointed out, because, again, it's a Shanahan-Kubiak play action, on top of it, they do a lot of max protection. So this is not the week to expect big pressure numbers, sacks, because not only do they have good players up front, they're also on top of it. They max protect a lot and send out fewer receivers than most NFL teams. So it's going to be interesting.
All right, John. The Saints have scored on all 15 offensive drives that Derek Carr has played in this season. It's the longest streak by any quarterback at any point of a season going back to 1978. So can the Eagles force a punt on Sunday?
Yeah, I'm going to buy that. You can't keep up that pace, Mike. You can't keep it up.
Well, and it's a good conversational. It's a good conversational starting point that this team has scored 91 points in 2 games. You figure there's got to be a little bit of a drop off where they just don't, click.
Exactly. So, I mean, you're playing the odds there. I mean, it can't continue. It literally can't continue. So, yeah, I think you're going to get to see a punt. Now, I think they're going to score. Yeah, I think they're going to score a bunch of points, but I do think they can't keep up that pace. And, Derek Carr's a good quarterback. I wouldn't call him a great quarterback. I think, as Vic also said, this is the perfect offense for him. I think this is the best offense he's been in that can take advantage of what he does well and kind of hide what he doesn't do well. So I think it's a perfect situation for him. And that's why he's playing at the level he's playing at. But, at the same time, I think he's got another streak of 2 touchdowns or more dating back to last season, plus 100 passer rating for, I think, 6 consecutive games. And only 4 guys have done it for 7 games. And that's Manning, Brady, Rodgers, and Mahomes.
Yeah.
And he doesn't belong in that conversation. So
yeah, no, he's a weird guy in terms of, he had that 1 year and he kind of got the money and then but he's kind of, you kind of think of him, I don't know, is he in like that Kirk Cousins kind of like, middle of the road?
Yeah, he's a little bit younger. He's younger, he's healthier. But yeah, that's kind of the guy he is. Yeah, he's like a younger, he's accurate, not as accurate as Kirk, but if you give him time, he will hurt you. But he's also, not capable of, doing a lot of off-schedule stuff that's going to hurt you or extending plays. So
they also have a bunch of guys.
Operation.
They also, John, have a bunch of guys that are kind of like Olave was really good at Ohio State, but he wasn't getting the same amount of publicity in the draft. Shaheed's just a guy who can run, but he's not a well-known player in college. Kamara, I think to me, he's the difference. I mean, Kamara was an awesome player. Yeah. He was an awesome player on a bad team or mediocre teams, and then he got hurt. In the last 2 years, he has kind of not been a factor. But he seems to, a lot of times running backs, when they go away, they generally don't come back to the player they were. And he seemingly is back to that player.
Yeah, and he's never run for 1,000 yards. But he's always up in the 900. And then when he's healthy, he's up at 800 yards receiving. So he's kind of the guy that everybody thought Saquon Barkley is, or everybody thinks he is. He's one of those guys who can really do it both ways. But he's not a volume guy when it comes to the running part of it. But he's just difficult to deal with. And he's a playmaker. He scores a bunch of touchdowns. He always has. He's just a really good player. He's their best player.
John, a couple more. Here we go. Buy or sell. The defensive player we'll be talking about Monday's segment will be Jalen Carter. You said it. He called his play trash. He was benched because he was late, and he's played, well, trashy. So is he the guy that we'll be talking about when you're on Monday? Well, we'll figure out what time you're on Monday.
Boy, I don't think so.
No?
because, as I said, they were a really good center, Eric McCoy. They have a really good guard. And on top of it, one of the things with Atlanta, I don't think people know how good Chris Lindstrom is. That's a 2-time second-team All-Pro. That's a really good player who knows how to play. Now, still, I expect more out of Jalen Carter. You saw some flashes, but the consistency isn't there. So I think that's part of the problem, the consistency part of it. And, this is not the team where you're going to, because they're going to max protect. If they start struggling, they're just going to max protect, and they're going to shut it down. And that's sort of what the offense is about. And then it becomes, can you shut down a lesser receivers, not from a standpoint of productive. Olave is very good. They got one of the best deep threats in the NFL, arguably the best deep threat. So, but my point is, they're not like the Eagles with all their empty sets and sending out 5 receivers and things like that on certain plays. You're not going to see that nearly as much from the Saints. They would rather protect and say, all right, our guys are going to get open, our quarterback's going to deliver the football, and they'll make that adjustment. So I don't think you're going to be seeing big sack numbers. And if you don't see big sack numbers, people are going to think you're playing like trash, whether you are or you aren't.
I'll leave you with this one. By the way, the Eagles, including the playoffs, have lost 8 of 12 versus the Saints over the last 20 years. It's the second worst record they've had against any team they've played. So they have not fared well against the Saints and have not fared well in New Orleans as well. So buy or sell, if the Eagles lose this game and next week and are 1-3 at the bye, that the conversation will be about Nick Sirianni's job.
Oh, yeah, I buy that. It already is. It already is. One of the things that amazed me, and I blame it more on Jeffrey Lurie than anybody else, is I think it was easy to see this coming because of the setup that he approved of, and that's basically taking away the offensive power from the head coach. And even though, Nick Sirianni did it proactively because he knew it was coming, he didn't want to give it up, no matter what he says. So from that standpoint, and then he created these little fiefdoms of Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. One drop pass revealed all the warts. One simple drop pass. And everybody's like, oh, well, who's in charge? Who's doing this? Who's making the 4th down decision? Does Nick believe in analytics? Does he not believe in analytics? Is he overriding Kellen Moore? Should he override Kellen? All this opens up on one drop pass. And the fact that Jeffrey Lurie didn't know that was coming, he's been around this town. He's from Boston, as your buddy Kevin Kincaid likes to point out. He's not a Philadelphian, but he's been here long enough that he should know better. And he should have foreseen this coming. And now
right, John,
you got the mess that it is.
Yeah, well, listen, you're right. They put that there, and I think that they were confident that they fixed everything else. So far, not so good, at least for 1 week. First week, you had some good vibes offensively, at least some defensive things, but we'll see. Tough Saints team Sunday at 1 right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, John, we will catch up with you on Monday.
All right, sounds good.
All right, Johnny Mack here on the Sports Bash, brought to you by Boardwalk Honda. Shop their lineup of new pre-owned and certified pre-owned Hondas online, boardwalkhonda.com. We got more Sports Bash coming up. A former GM weighs in on the Eagles roster configurations. We'll talk to Mike Lombardi in less than 20 minutes here on the Sports Bash. This hour brought to you by Broadleys Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation for generations. 609-390-3907, online at broadleys.net. We're live at Charlie's in Summers Point. Great day to stop out. So nice out. My gosh, it is warm outside. Stop out for a little happy hour Friday at Charlie's in Summers Point.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Hi, 3:30, Sports Bash Live. Michael Lombardi in 10 minutes. Sports Bash live at Charlie's in Summers Point. Thanks to that gentleman who stopped out here. Said he came here just for us. Had some wings, Bud Lights, and out the door. Nice to see you. Been listening since the beginning. Sports Bash Live. What hour is it? 3 o'clock? It's brought to you by Broadleys Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. It's good to see some people that have been here since the beginning of the show, way back when we were back on 1450 AM, and we've made it all the way through to the FM dial on 97.3 ESPN. 15 years of the Sports Bash live at Charlie's. It's our final happy hour Friday out on location. Phillies tonight, by the way, I got to find out. They're on Apple TV Plus. So I don't know what's up with that game here. But while we're at it, let me give you my Friday 5 brought to you by BMW of Atlantic City. Your luxury BMW experience is closer than you think. Take advantage of exceptional savings at BMW of Atlantic City. Shop their complete inventory online, BMWAtlanticCity.com. All right, Friday 5. Let's take a look at this week's NFL schedule and give you the Friday 5 favorite games this weekend that aren't the Eagles game. Here we go. I think there's some interesting games this week. I know one of them off the top of my head is Dallas and Baltimore, right? Baltimore 0-2. Dallas, we know the story. If Baltimore wins, Dallas is 1-2. If Baltimore loses, they'll be 0-3. So that one is definitely on the Friday 5. I'm going Houston, Minnesota. How about that, Josh? Houston, Minnesota. The winner, 3-0. You like that one?
Justin Jefferson is good to go, they say, for the game on Sunday.
So I'm in on that one. That's a CBS 1 o'clock game. I'm going to go, how about Pittsburgh and the Chargers? 2-0 teams. The winner of that game, 3-0.
And the lowest over-under of NFL Week 3.
Yeah, that's like the Iowa-Minnesota game.
It is.
So I got that game. That's number 3. Going Kansas City, Atlanta on Sunday night. I'll indulge on that. Atlanta at home in the Dome Sunday night. Can they clip Kansas City? I'll throw that one into the mix.
Travis Kelce said on the podcast this week he's playing like trash too, but he didn't say trash.
Number 5 in the Friday 5. Let me go. This is where there's a little bit of a drop-off. The Monday night games, neither one of them is very good. How about Detroit, Arizona? I got some interest in that game. You got any interest in that game?
Absolutely, because I want to see what Detroit does coming off of that loss at home. Their offense looked great in week 1, not so great in week 2. Meanwhile, Arizona, they're putting up points in bunches. So, Mike, I want to know, can Detroit keep up with Arizona?
Yeah, I mean, Arizona, 41 points last week, and Kyler Murray's been playing really, really good. Detroit, Super Bowl aspirations. So that'll be my 5th game this week in the Friday 5.
CC very intrigued?
Yeah, they're the 5 games I have. Now, San Francisco Rams lost some luster with some of the injury problems there. I mean, how many guys are hurt in that game?
Everyone. It seems like, except for the quarterbacks. Hopefully the quarterbacks are not next.
Denver, Tampa, Denver no good. Carolina, Vegas, Carolina awful. Miami, Seattle lost some luster with no Tua.
Right.
Chicago, Indy, I mean, the 2 young quarterbacks, if you're into those 2. Green Bay, is Willis probably going to play again against Levis? Not great. And then the Giants, I mean, just nobody's interested in them, taking on the Browns. So, they're my Friday 5 this week. They're brought to you by BMW of Atlantic City. Your luxury BMW experience is closer than you think. Take advantage of exceptional savings at BMWAtlanticCity.com. Shop the entire complete inventory online, BMWAtlanticCity.com. When we come back, here on the Sports Bash live from Charlie's in Summers Point. A former GM weighs in on the Eagles roster configurations and issues. Mike Lombardi is here. That's next.
You're listening.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds or Skims, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret? With Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell whatever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/try, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/try to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/try.
With Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
All right, welcome back. Sports Bash 340. We're at Charlie's at Summers Point. The 6th annual Jack Thomas Memorial is Monday, October 28th. So a couple quick things. They will have the Phillies game tonight. That is an Apple TV Plus game. So sometimes you got to check now. That's the problem with these streaming things. Some of the bars, they don't have it. They'll have it on tonight. They'll have the mainland game on tonight. Charlie's at Summers Point. I keep getting people texting and asking me that question. If I come, they're going to have the Phillies game on Apple TV Plus tonight. I found out for you. They will have the Phillies game on tonight. Apple TV Plus, if you are looking for that game. All the games in this series, except for tomorrow, are going to be shown nationally. Last night was on Fox. Tonight is Apple TV Plus. And then on Sunday, that game is on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. Both Saturday and Sunday's games are going to be live on 97.3 ESPN. You can listen to the Phillies and the Mets on Sunday and the Eagles and the Saints on Sunday here on 97.3 ESPN. We've got one thing we talked earlier about the Eagles and Saints. We haven't got the injury report yet. So Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was not at practice today. He was in the locker room, but apparently did not want to discuss anything having to do with whether he was playing or not. So that was the latest we got on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So if he plays, it sounds like it's going. Now, he did say, I'll see you guys in New Orleans, so I don't know what that means. But one of the things that you can take a look at is whether or not he makes the trip might mean that he has a chance to play in the game. Like, is he going to go if he doesn't have a chance to play? Probably not. But if he has a chance to play in the game, as John said, that injury report should come out in about 20 minutes or so or something like that when Kaplan joins us here on the Sports Bash for Football at 4. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. We'll talk about a little bit more of the game, trying to catch up with Michael Lombardi. If we can't catch up with Mike now, maybe we'll try to grab him a little bit later on in the show. I got a bunch of text messages that I want to get to while I have a chance now. We'll try to bang out some of the text messages that have been coming in. A lot of stuff with the Phillies. We talked about the Phillies in the first hour regarding. Listen, I do want to make this clear. Look at who just walked in the door, my man, Deshaun. Man, I haven't seen you in a long time. I want to say this about some of the Philly stuff. First off, I will tell you, to me, Rob Thompson is just whatever, okay? I think Rob Thompson is a good guy for this team in that he is a culture setter. They like playing for him. Do I think Rob Thompson is a premier X and O guy? I do not. Quite frankly, I don't think that exists in baseball anymore. I think what fans have a hard time with is we believe that the manager is making every decision. And I get that. Like, people are privy to information, and not everybody's privy to that information. You talk to people who cover baseball and work inside organizations, you'll hear that the manager doesn't make a lot of these decisions. So do I think that Rob Thomson is a great in-game strategist? No. I don't think he's a elite in-game manager. Do I think that some of the decisions that are made are organizational decisions? I don't think it. I am 100% aware of that. You talk to people who work for the team and give you information, there is organizational philosophies. You know, I got someone say, you never rip Rob Thomson. A lot of the things that are debatable with Rob and the managers in baseball that's the problem. They're no longer managerial decisions. They are organizational philosophies. So you as a fan might be mad that the lineup is right, left, and they start guys and they sit guys based on who's pitching. They go through the analytics, and they will look at the lineup and say, we're not hitting Brandon Marsh against left-handed pitching because he's not very good against left-handed pitching. So they play a lesser player, in your mind, a lesser player. Like Christian Pache was here. He's not a better player than Marsh. You might want Marsh to play against lefties. But their organizational philosophy is, we're just not going to hit against lefties. And that's most teams. You look around baseball, most teams, like, it's not like it's 1986 anymore, where you just penciled in the same starters every day. You didn't really have a lot of platoon situations back in the day. You had your 9 starters. They played almost every single day, and it is what it is. I mean, you might have had one guy that was like the bat off the bench. You don't have that anymore. Now you have full rosters of guys who, this guy hits against lefties, and he's the guy that plays against righties. Just like you have pitchers that, hey, he's a left-handed specialist, and he's a guy that comes in early in the game. These are organizational philosophies. So these are not things that I think, in my mind, like if you want to be someone who still wants it to be 1983 and you want to criticize managerial because he because of the decisions, then just have fun and I'll play along. But I'm not going to go against the information that I've been given that suggests that these aren't managerial decisions. These are organizational philosophies. The lineup is something that is generally discussed between the front office and the manager before a game, right? They kind of look at all the analytics and the stats, and they say, all right, this is the lineup we're going to go with today. Most of the off days for a player are kind of built in ahead of time. In other words, why is so-and-so not playing today? Well, he was already not playing today. It doesn't matter that he had 5 hits yesterday or that he's hitting 7 straight games. He just was planned to have a day off today. You know, some people get mad because, like, Garrett Stubbs one night, they didn't hit for him in the 9th inning. We went through all this. You know, hey, there's some days where so-and-so is just not hitting today. You're not playing in the game. But, again, I go to, fine, I don't like that decision. If I'm managing that game, now I'm also not managing 162 games. We're managing as fans every night. We're managing every night as fans. We're not managing with 162 games in mind. We're managing for that night. And on that night, to me, that decision, you might say, I would hit for Stubbs. And I would say, so would I. I would. So, therefore, if you want to say that's not a good decision by the manager, I could say that's not a good decision by the manager. But my point on that is I don't hold it against the manager for not making the decision because I'm also not managing 162 games, number one, and that decision will not come up in the playoffs. So if you say he didn't hit for Stubbs or he didn't hit for Cal Stevenson, well, Stubbs or Cal Stevenson won't be hitting in that situation, so I don't have to judge him on that decision. Do I like the decision? No, I do not. So people act like, you know, I got a guy texting in, you never criticize Thomson. Because a lot of the decisions I understand that they're not his decisions. That's not giving him you want to, I don't know what, you can put them all in there. You're blaming one guy, and I'm saying it's not one guy.
Well, because people might want a boogeyman. They want the fall guy. They want a symbol of their pain and their rage and their frustrations, and they want somebody to place it on. They don't want to place it on an organization or an impersonal entity.
And I get that. I totally understand that because they're not privy to, everything. So you're going to just go with what you have. And I can't criticize that. I'm trying to say if you are listening to me, if you make the decision, I'm going to listen to Mike Gill in the Sports Bash. And this is what I'm telling you based on the information that I've been given. You can choose to take the information that I've given and use it or disagree with me and argue with me. And if you want to be the guy who disagrees and argues, that to me just sounds like you are unwilling to change your opinion. So in other words, your opinion is, I think Thompson stinks, and I don't want to budge on that. So I'm going to say X, Y, and Z. He does this. All right, he didn't hit for Stubbs. I really don't care that he didn't hit for Stubbs. I don't find that to be a big blunder in the big picture. On that night, fine. Bad decision. Hit for Stubbs. You have better options. A jackass could make that inclination. But if he doesn't hit for Stubbs in that moment, you have to ask yourself a question. Did he not hit for Stubbs in that moment because he's that big of an idiot, or is there something bigger?
Right. Is there a larger?
I think if you have any sense in your brain, you would say he obviously is not hitting for Stubbs for some other reason other than he's just an idiot.
Well, it's like, for example, when the Phillies took Bryson Stott or Brandon Marsh, these guys all like because a left-handed pitcher on the mound, right? It's the idea that, hey, maybe, just maybe, there's a reason behind the decision. It's not just like.
And listen. The reasons, you don't have to agree with the reasons, and
Sure.
They're not always right. And sometimes the reasons are idiotic. But to me, if I'm a fan and I say, and look, if I'm a fan, I hate Rob Thompson. Why did they not hit for Stubbs? Stubbs is terrible. They should hit for him. I would say, I agree. If I'm managing that game, and if I'm managing that game and I have the ability to hit for Stubbs in that spot, I'm going to do it. So I would say, if it's solely Thompson who makes that decision, I would say I don't agree with that decision.
On that sole point,
decision.
Mike Gill agrees.
I would say yes. But you have to understand, they're not managing for Tuesday. They're managing for October. They're managing 162 games. So some days there's somebody in that front office, the doctor, the general manager, the team president, that says, listen, today Real Muto's not playing, so don't utilize him at all. So don't hit for Stubbs. You got to keep Stubbs in the game because we don't want Real Muto playing. Same thing, with Cal Stevenson. He came up to the bat in one game, and someone said you should hit for him. And I would say, I agree. And if that's solely the manager, 100% Rob Thompson, I would say, I don't like that decision. I think it's a bad move to not hit for Cal Stevenson in that spot.
But Mike,
now, a month later, Cal Stevenson's had some really big hits.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's the other side of the conversation. It's the emotional swing. It's the pendulum. Now the fans are saying, why isn't Cal Stevenson playing, right? So this is why the fans sometimes need to step back and have a little context.
Listen, I would love to be on that side where sometimes you just make crazy, I don't like Rob Thompson. I don't like Rob Thompson or dislike Rob Thompson. What I like about Rob Thompson is he's very steady. He's very even-keeled. I like that about a manager. Other people want their manager to be this fiery guy who yells and screams. That's not the kind of guy that I like. I think the Phillies react favorably to Thompson's steadiness and his even keel. I value that more than anything. Now, do I think that he makes great decisions with his bullpen and his pitchers? Not over 162 every night of the week, but for the most part, I think they do a pretty good job with what they have. Does he make perfect decisions every night? No, he doesn't. It's 162 games. If you think he's going to make the right decision every single game, you're kidding yourself. And you got to keep in mind, some of the decisions that he might want to make, he simply cannot make based on things that we're not privy to. What pitchers are available? Who's not available? What hitters are available? Who's not available? Who was put in the lineup because it was an off day? Who was available to pinch hit? Who's
Speaking
not
of the
available
lineup,
to pinch hit?
I just got the lineup, Mike.
All right, give it to me.
Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Bohm.
Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Bohm.
Then Castellanos. Real Muto's back in the lineup.
Okay.
Sosa.
Now, like the other night, he was asked, is Real Muto going to be back in the lineup? He said no. He knew the night before. Now, let me tell you something. If you are a manager, okay, and you have a team and you have decisions, you don't generally know your lineup the night before for the next day unless somebody gives it to you. Or unless there's, you know what I'm saying? Unless somebody told you, hey, Real Muto's not available tomorrow. Because if you're the manager, you would sit down and say, okay, who are we going with today? He already knew Real Muto wasn't playing. What does that tell you?
Really quick, also, Sosa at second, Wilson in left, and Rojas in center.
All right, Sosa's at second, Wilson's in left, Rojas is in center. All right, because there's a left-handed pitcher, I'm assuming, tonight, right? Manaea's a right-hander, isn't he? No, he's a lefty. What? All right. Oh, okay. I was going to say Manaea's a right. Peterson's a lefty. Yes, that makes more sense. If Manaea was pitching, that lineup doesn't make any sense. All right, coming up, football at 4. Adam Kaplan with all the latest on the Eagles taking on the Saints.
97.3 ESPN presents the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Kaplan, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
I give my heart and soul to this franchise, as so many of us do.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Mike Gill live at Charlie's in Summers Point on a Friday afternoon, starting to fill up on a Friday. Phillies tonight. You can watch the game here at Charlie's. And, of course, you can watch the Eagles and the Saints this Sunday right here at Charlie's Summers Point. Adam Kaplan from the Inside the Birds podcast is here. And just like old times, Adam, we're back on a normal schedule. The injury report is fresh out, and we have A.J. Brown, Johnny Wilson, and a new addition yesterday to that injury report. That was Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Mike, did not work for the last 2 days. He's got a foot injury. They're listing him as questionable. Look, they could also downgrade him to Martyr, doubtful or out, so we'll see. They downgraded last Sunday A.J. Brown to out, so we'll see what happens. A.J. Brown didn't practice, no surprise, he's out. I'd be very surprised if he played next week at Tampa because they have the bye the next week. It's a hamstring. You don't want these things to linger. Johnny Wilson, the good thing is he will be available. He has no game status designation with a hamstring. They do need, he actually can block. Like, he's really good at it. That does matter. They obviously could use him as a receiver without A.J. Brown, but that's it. Now, for the Saints, the big one is Marshawn Lattimore, their star cornerback, who, Mike, if you study his career since 2017, he's had really bad issues with hamstrings. He missed last week's game. It's not great. He did a little work yesterday. They'll see what he does today, but that would certainly help the Eagles if he didn't play. But it didn't matter last week when they destroyed the Cowboys.
Sure didn't, and that was a offensive explosion. They've scored 91 points, though, in 2 games. They've had offensive explosions in both games this year. We'll get into that. Eagles, just Brown and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You mentioned Wilson. What about the Saints side of things?
Yeah, no, I just mentioned it with Marshawn Lattimore. And Colin Saunders also, he's a starting defensive tackle. He probably won't play with his calf injury. He's missed the first 2 games. Brian Brisset is a former first-round pick there. He was last year a first-rounder for them. Whether he's ready or not, he's going to play. They're not real deep at the position, so he's going to have to play. But they're coming pretty healthy, Mike. We'll get over the matchups in a second. The big issue, the game changer, is A.J. Brown. The Eagles have to generate points. Hurts has got to play better. He did not play well. Probably, if you stacked up the last 2 years, that was one of his worst games. We outlined this with Greg Cosell on our Inside the Tape show, which, by the way, has generated over 100 comments on our YouTube channel. Pretty funny. People are pretty fired up. Most of the Hurts supporters agree with what we saw. They're like, this can't happen. So they're going to have to manufacture points. But, Mike, I'm telling you, guys are getting open last week. Jalen was not throwing it to them.
Yeah, and, let's talk about some of the issues heading into this game, and I would imagine at the top of that list, where do you put Hurts?
Yeah, he's at number one, Mike. But here's the thing. All he has to do is not roll out to his right. Don't move without pressure. It's one thing if, and the offensive line, Mike, last week, we should mention, for the most part, was outstanding. There are 3 or 4 plays the offensive line didn't do a great job in pass pro. Other than that, they were phenomenal. They've actually been very good the first 2 games. Hurts has this habit, which he had last year, which it wasn't that bad in week 1. He did a little of it. This past week, it was really bad, where he moves without pressure. You can't do that, and he rolls to his right. He just has a habit. He's not the only quarterback I've seen do this. He's got to take what's there, check the ball down. I mean, it was encouraging that Barkley did have 4 catches last week. A couple of them were checkdowns, but they need more explosive plays from Barkley in the pass game. The run game is phenomenal. But we need... See, Mike, the one thing I've had with Kellen Moore is not the play design. The scheme's really good. He schemed guys open last week. That wasn't the problem. We're looking for those explosive plays that we thought we were going to get from DeAndre Swift last season with the former offensive coordinator. We didn't see one of them. Really, we didn't see anything. It was very disappointing. I know it's early, and we did have the great catch by Barkley in week 1.
And no Brown.
We're looking for more of that. Yeah, we're looking for more of that.
And not having A.J. Brown, he had a 66-yard catch in the first game. They just couldn't get anything going down the field in the second game, right?
Yeah, one play, I think, of over 20 yards, and I think it was actually the run by Hurts, so that's not what you're looking for. And the other thing is Jalen will help himself if he gets rid of the football and doesn't take so much contact. 13 runs, that's not what you're looking for. And by the way, they weren't all designed. Trust me on that one.
How big of a factor? Colin Thompson tells me all the time the most difficult. Now he played for Carolina, so he constantly went to New Orleans. That this is the most difficult spot in the league to play in, even when they're just an average team.
It's weird. Their home field for years was great, and then when they were a bad team, teams would just go in there and win. The crowd noise, though it was loud, wouldn't matter. But we're expecting to be very loud. And I get it. We know the Eagles have not had a good record against them, but how many of those players are left on the roster that faced them in New Orleans? Very few. So we know Lane Johnson is. He was there for the last game. But I think that was the Sidney Jones game where he did not play well and he grabbed his hamstring. that was not a good performance. So look, the bottom line is with the Eagles here, they got to handle it. You've got 2 offensive linemen. You've got Cam Jurgens, who's never started a game there. This is going to be interesting. You've got Mekhi Becton, who's never started a game at right guard there. That communication is, Todd Herman's told us on Patreon. He had a great interview for us, a Chalk Talk series, and he told us last month about how you really have to be careful when you have offensive line changes. There's got to be this simpatico and communication. It doesn't happen overnight. By the way, so far it's been good, but this is going to be a test, Mike. I'm glad we brought this up because that. And Hurts, we know Hurts has played in big games and loud stadiums, but this is to another level.
All right, we're looking at some of the issues heading into this game. Hurts at the top, crowd noise is big. What kind of pass rush can the Eagles generate, if any, on Sunday?
Yeah, this is the big one, Mike. Their edge rushers don't have a sack. I know it's only 2 games, but that's pretty bad. They're going to have to figure this out. I'm a little bit puzzled. I know the sim pressures aren't working. It's the guys aren't getting home. Sim pressures, when you drop those edge rushers, you hope that the front gets up there, or you drop your D lineman. You're hoping the front gets up there. No one's getting to the passer. Bryce Huff has earned his number of 0 so far. He's been a 0. He's trying, but he's just not getting home. Derek Carr, by the way, he's very up and down against the blitz over his career. He's risk averse. Now, if it gets protected and he likes what he sees, he delivers it. And you're going to see Rashid Shaheed Sunday, Mike. He's an elite deep threat. He's gotten off to a great start. You know where the ball's going. He rarely catches anything short. It's going to go long, and the Eagles better have a plan. The Eagles have been playing a lot of single high safety, which is not usually what Vic does. Vic Fangio, their defense coordinator, usually plays a lot of 2 high safeties to take away the deep ball. So I would think you'd see more of that going forward here, at least in this game, because you've got a deep threat like this. And by the way, Chris Olave could also run. Don't forget about him.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at Shaheed and how he can beat you deep, and I keep thinking about, like, who matches up, how do they match up with him, from where he lines up, especially if Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's out, you might have to move Maddox, maybe, to say what kind of configuration happens there. That's a whole other factor here. Who's the guy who lines up across from Shaheed and who can run with him?
Yeah, Mike, in fact, we talk about that on today's show, that they have the depth to do it, but it causes issues because they're so light at safety. In fact, right now, Tristan McCollum is the likely starter for Gardner-Johnson if he can't play. But they also can move Maddox here because Maddox was exclusive at safety in training camp because of the low numbers they had at the position. Or, obviously you could put Maddox at safety, but then you have who's your nickel? Is it DeJean? Well, he's probably not ready for that yet, being that he barely played last week. Gardner-Johnson could do it if they needed to, but he can't because he's hurt. So they don't have the choices they would have. Or of course they could move Mitchell back, which is they could go to what they did in training camp, which is when they go when they go nickel, Mitchell moves inside, and Isaiah Rodgers didn't play last week. He was active but never had a snap. Rodgers could be the outside corner. By the way, he's been cleared, so he'll be available, Mike. So they have options. I'm not saying they're great options, but they have options.
Adam Kaplan, football at 4. Of course, Eagles and Saints this weekend. We're looking at some of the issues. Kamara, he looks back. This team, run concepts, pretty good, much like the Falcons. Had big running room, defensive tackles, and the run D this week. What kind of role will they have?
Well, okay, so the thing is they got to get the rules. The rules, talking to defensive line coaches over the years, there are rules and linebacker coaches. The rules that the linemen have up front, and you're going to see, Mike, the wide zone, the stretch play, that's the old Shanahan stretch play to Terrell Davis. The mid zone, that the Eagles are getting squashed defensively. The line is not. The lineman has been bad. They have to do a better job. It's funny. It's not so much tackling. There's so much space, Mike, to run. It has less to do with tackling. It's cutting down the spacing, and they've got to do a better job. You're going to see it. Clint Kubiak, who learned his offense from his dad, and he really starts. It's funny if you really look at it, Mike. It all started with Bill Walsh. Shanahan works for Walsh. So does Mike Holmgren. Andy Reid worked for Holmgren. Andy takes his version of it, the West Coast offense. He changes it up, but he still runs the West Coast. Everybody, the West Coast offenses, Mike, are dominant in the National Football League. Bobby Slowick, right? Bobby Slowick, who's the Texans offensive coordinator, he was never even a position coach. This guy was an analyst for the Niners. And look at the job he's doing. Look, we could talk how great C.J. Stroud has been, and he really is. But it doesn't help if you don't have a great scheme. They've got a great scheme. So these West Coast offenses and the timing and the crossers. But what I like with this one, Clint Kubiak, is, okay, yeah, we're running a timing-based offense, but we're also going to take shot plays with Rashid Shaheed. So this is going to be tough. The Saints are getting the Eagles at a time when they're very vulnerable. And I'm really surprised that the Saints are only a 3-point favorite. That to me, I would have them at 5 based on the way the Eagles have played.
Well, the one thing we were discussing this earlier, see what you feel about this. They scored 91 points in 2 games. You wonder, at what point, is that who they are offensively, or do they come crashing back down? Or you say, no, this is an explosive offense? Because I don't know that anybody went into this season, Adam, saying, man, this Saints offense is going to be lethal.
No, in fact, I thought it would be around 8 or 9 wins because they're so inconsistent. Carr's never been a consistent quarterback. He's never had a year that Hurts had 2 years ago. He's had some good years, but never elite like Jalen had 2 years ago. They're both very inconsistent, by the way. It is really interesting because you got, I had a running joke with a friend of mine. I call them the inconsistents. You could go throughout the league, and guys who like Trevor Lawrence, right, who flash but have trouble being consistent. Jalen, 2 years ago, elite, great. Last year, regression. This year, so far, not good. Better in week 1, but it wasn't great. It was very up and down last week, not good at all. And then Derek Carr, you never know what you're going to get, but he's so talented, but he checks the ball down, he's risk-averse, so it's like that, Mike. It's a quarterback-driven league, and you got 2 inconsistent quarterbacks. So to answer your question, Mike, it's not sustainable to score 91 points, 47 and 40 and 44. And by the way, Derek Carr's only thrown the ball 42 times. I mean, this is ridiculous. What do you have? But not,
they haven't.
I think 19.
They haven't punted. They haven't had a punt one time.
Crazy. Yeah, that's
that 15 drives at him, no punts for Carr.
Mike, 16 attempts last week, only set 11 completions, 243 yards, Mike, on set 11 completions. That's ridiculous.
Well, we brought him up. You brought him up, Shaheed. He would worry me as big play, sneaking behind somebody and getting behind the safeties in this game.
I'm really interested to see if they go too high because, again, Vic's his history has been two deep safeties. For some reason, they're not playing as much too deep. I don't know why. And we're going to talk about this on our pregame show with Cosell. We have the numbers about in terms of coverages and so forth. And, they're heavy zone. It's just a matter of, do they have two deep safeties? They have to because Olave can run, Shaheed can run, and Alvin Kamara has been reborn. All this, people thought he was finished. They ain't finished.
Yeah.
On that fake grass, that turf, and the dome. Holy smokes, Mike. He's been unbelievable.
You're 100% right. By the way, no surprise, A.J. Brown is officially out. Yep. We'll see what happens with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. But they lose Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That's another key guy on that defensive side of the ball. Adam Kaplan, Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com. And, of course, you can get that on all podcasting platforms. And don't forget their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. All right, Adam, we will check up with you on Tuesday.
Thank you.
All right. By the way, Mike Lombardi is going to be at 4:30 today. He was a little cross in the schedule plans there, so Mike will join us in about 15 minutes from now. Yeah, the report just came down from Ian Rappaport that C.D. Lamb is off the injury report. He is good to go. A.J. Brown is officially out for the game, and he will not play. So I don't think that's any surprise to anybody there that A.J. Brown is officially out. But now we don't have to sit here and wait. Do what I did last week. My fantasy team, I stuck with Brown, and then I had no one to drop, so I had to take the 0 last week. And now my whole receiving core is out. I got Debo out. I got Debo out. I got A.J. Brown out and Puka Nacua out. I'm struggling, man. I got Johnny Wilson-type players filling in right now.
Well, did you pick anybody off waivers this week?
Yeah, I did. Well, my bench is pretty good. My bench, I have Rashid Shaheed, Jameson Williams, and I picked up Darnell Mooney from Atlanta. So I do have a couple guys that can play.
Mooney's a good pickup.
Yeah, Mooney's my third guy. Williams is pretty good, and Rashid Shaheed. It's one of those things where, people that don't like the fantasy, I don't like the guy scoring against my team. Well, guess what? If he scores against my team, I might as well benefit from getting the points somewhere because I don't want to be angry that this guy keeps ripping me.
Well, that's the funny part where it's like, you Mike, you've been talking all week about how bad the Eagles' defense is, so now you look at Rashid Shaheed, looks a little more appealing after talking about the Eagles' struggles this week, right?
I am very concerned about him because I've watched the Saints play in both of these games because they played Dallas. The one game, that was the game that was on TV. So I saw a lot of him, and he's absolutely just a burner, man. And I talked about this earlier because Olave, he went to Ohio State, but he wasn't like
he wasn't the number one guy there.
He wasn't the number one guy there, and he wasn't the top receiver or one of the the big name in that receiver class. So he kind of got lost in the sauce there, around that group. But he is outstanding. I had Olave on my fantasy team last year, so I watched him play a lot. I think he's just so solid. And to have Shaheed as the other guy, they complement each other really, really well. But the big thing is you got to keep in mind when you watch the team try to stop Atlanta's run game last week, the Saints run a very similar style of run game with the cut blocks and all that stuff. So it is going to be another tough game against the run. And Kamara, as Adam just said, Kamara seems like he is back to where he was, probably more so like 3 years ago. He's been hurt the last 2.
He absolutely has been hurt. And it kind of reminds me when you and Adam were talking about Mike. I was listening to Mike Mayock this week on the Believe in Eagles pod. He talked about how he thinks Kamara is the key to everything on the Saints offense.
You got to stop or slow down Alvin Kamara. And that doesn't mean just run. And let's face it, the Eagles' run defense has been porous. So you got to slow down the run with Alvin Kamara. But you also got to watch him in the pass game. And I'm not sure the Eagles linebackers can hang with him in any kind of man-to-man situations at all. He's hard to match up with. So, number one, stop or slow down number 41 because the Saints offense goes through him.
It does, and as Adam just chronicled, you're hearing Shaheed and all the points that are scored. You would thinking they're chucking it all over the yard. What did he say? 16 pass attempts last week?
Yeah, that's all they did.
For Derek Carr?
Yeah, Derek Carr had a very efficient day for Derek Carr.
609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Phil says, Mike, a crazy question, but I'll nevertheless ask. There are no crazy questions, just people who are crazy who ask them, Phil. I just kid. He says, would the Eagles ever consider occasionally rotating Devin White in as an edge rusher?
Moshe brought that up 2 days ago.
I would say, would they consider it? My answer would be no. I don't think he's not active on game day.
Moshe brought up to you, Mike. He said he doesn't understand why the Eagles don't just use that guy in specific situations, but he said for whatever reason they don't want to, and it's a problem.
Well, I think there's two reasons. He doesn't play special teams, so you can't make him active if he's not going to do anything.
Fangio mentioned that earlier this week, yep.
Yep, and I don't think Fangio wants to blitz, so if he puts him on the field, what is that telling everybody?
That there's a blitz coming.
Exactly. So it's not really being you're not really disguising anything.
It's like, remember years ago when J.J. Arcega-Whiteside would come into the game and it's like, well, we know it's going to be a run play because he ain't getting the paid passes.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Like if he's on the field, you might as well have a neon sign saying, hey, we're blitzing.
Right.
So I just feel like Fangio doesn't want to blitz. He doesn't play special teams. The only way I see Devin White, Phil, okay, and this would just be, this is just my thought. The only way we see Devin White play is if Dean either gets hurt or he's so bad that he has to be replaced. And then White's the guy playing every snap, and then maybe you can start to utilize him. But for whatever reason, they feel that, and I'm not questioning that reason, I'm just saying for whatever reason, they have deemed that Dean is the better option over Devin White.
Well, it goes back.
Therefore, White has got no role on this team.
It goes back to what John McMullen told you weeks ago, Mike, that Nakobe Dean had performed as the best linebacker, and that then Fangio declared a couple weeks ago that he won the starting spot. So we've known for weeks that Dean was ahead of White. It was just a matter of if White was going to have a role in this team, and as of right now, he doesn't have one.
Yeah, no, but I'm not questioning that. I'm just saying for whatever reason, whatever he did, I don't know, did they say he was better against the run or he's better against the pass or he just is more I don't know what their reasoning is. But for whatever reason, they like Dean more than they like White. And I'm not questioning that because from what I was told from people in Tampa was that White wasn't very good.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
You can always ask me a question, Josh.
Can you
I will
name
be gracious in my answer as well.
Can you name the other two receivers that were ahead of Chris Olave at Ohio State?
Oh, on the same team, you had Jackson Smith and Jigba.
That is correct. He was the number one in catches and touchdowns the last 2 years he was there.
What year was Olave? Was he a rookie last year?
He was a rookie in 2022.
In 2022.
Yes.
So Jackson Smith and Jigba was there.
That's correct. He was the number one receiver on the team that year.
And Marvin Harrison.
Marvin Harrison Jr. was on the team, but he was only 11 catches that year.
So who's the other guy?
You saw him last night. Garrett Wilson.
Oh, Garrett Wilson. Damn it. Should have got that.
I kind of thought you were going to get that because you just saw him on TV last night score a touchdown.
Yeah, and I had an anytime touchy last night for Garrett Wilson and Bryce Hall, and I had 2 touchdowns, over 1.5 for Aaron Rodgers, and I had over 25 yards receiving for Bryce Hall. You know what I didn't get in my parlay?
Alan Lazard.
A touchdown pass from Jacoby Brissett. I took the over, 0.5. I figured he would get a little late garbage time, a little back of the end zone to the tight end. You know what I mean?
Sure. They benched him instead.
Never came. No. You know what, though? That real quick, and we're going to talk to Michael Lombardi about this, about the quarterback play, what he thinks as he was a general manager in this league. Would he sell his soul to try to get a quarterback in the landscape of today's game? Would he do that? I want to get into that with him. But everybody's saying, Drake May, you got to put Drake May in. No, don't let him get on the field. Let him sit there. Don't put him out there on this team. By the way, the receivers in that draft were Drake London, Garrett Wilson. Chris Olave was the next pick after Garrett Wilson. Jamison Williams was right after that. When Wilson, Olave, Jamison Williams. Bang, bang, bang. 10, 11, 12. All right, when we come back, former NFL GM. You see him on the Pat McAfee Show. Local guy, Michael Lombardi, will join me next right here on the Sports Bash.
You're listening to the
O'Reilly. You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
With Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
All right, 4:31. No Nuggets today. Nick is out in New Orleans. He's flying there right now. This hour is brought to you by Jersey Cow. Northfield, Brigantine. They're open noon to 10. Locations are open year-round. Ice cream is a thing year-round at Jersey Cow. We're in Summers Point at Charlie's in Summers Point. They will have the Phillies game on tonight. They'll also have the Mainland game on tonight. So if you were wondering about the Phillies on Apple TV+, they will have that game on tonight here at Charlie's. Bud Light are $3 at the bar. You can stop on out here for the show. Michael Lombardi is host of The Morning Line, the new morning show on VSiN, and former GM in the NFL, three-time Super Bowl winning NFL executive. We often have audio from the GM Shuffle podcast, in which he is the host of, and he joins us right now on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Mike, welcome back, man. It's been a little while.
Hey, Mike, how are you? Hope all is well.
All is well. Last time I think we caught up was at the Super Bowl. So new team, new eyes, new paint around this team. But, man, I'd like to get your reaction to what we saw going back to Monday night and where this team kind of sits after that, because so many questions entering. Did they get past last year, the fallout from last year? Last Monday night felt a lot like the last 6 weeks of last year, did it not?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, last year it started out so good. Everybody remember in week 2 they killed Tampa. They were on their way to the Super Bowl. So I think to me, every year you're going to face struggles. Every year you're going to face, difficulties as you go through it and how you deal with them. I wrote about it today for VSiN Online. I think one of the jobs that every head coach has to have is to figure out his team, figure out the strengths and weaknesses of the team, how they have to play, and correct the problems. And I think that's what faces Nick Sirianni. I mean, they couldn't stop the run. They're small on the edges of their defense. They're not in great physical shape once again. I mean, last year they were a disaster. This year in the fourth quarter, they can't get any pass rush. But it's week 2. So there's times to get this thing going, and I think ultimately, they've got to figure out how to do that, and that falls on Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, you mentioned pass rush in the fourth quarter. It doesn't seem that, Mike, they're getting it at any point. So what do you make of the roster configuration? Does it fit what Vic Fangio wants to do? Do you see a little bit of a disconnect with what he has and what he wants to do, or will that materialize as they get more used to him?
Well, I think to me, yeah. I mean, look, Vic has a specific way of wanting to do it. But I think at the end of the day, the Eagles want to be able to rush the passer. They love getting upfield. They believed 2 years ago 60 of their 70 sacks came from their defensive line. This year they have 1 sack from Milton Williams in their defensive line. They signed Bryce Huff because they know they needed more pass rush. The Eagles are always been about, we're going to put all our money in the defensive linemen. We're going to dominate the game with the defensive linemen, and we're going to take lesser linebackers and feel like we can compensate. Well, when the defensive line doesn't dominate like they haven't in the first 2 weeks, it's a problem.
Mike Lombardi's with us here, and of course you can hear Mike is host of the Morning Line, the new morning show on VSiN. It's you can check that out for a limited time. Get the first month of your VSiN Pro subscription for just $9.99, including access to VSiN's 24/7 channel, special betting guides, pro betting tips, and more. Visit VSiN.com/subscribe for more. And he is a former GM in the league, so I will ask you, Mike, as a guy who's had to pick up that phone, they're not getting pass rush. Is that something you can do in season, or is that not realistic?
It's completely unrealistic. I mean, if there were great pass rushers out there, they'd be signed, but they're not. I mean, so look, what they got to do is they got to get the players that they worked with to get them to play better. I mean, that's just a cold reality of it. They got to they paid $18 million a year for Bryce Huff. They got to get him to play at a higher level. They got to get Sweat to play at a higher level. They got to get Nolan Smith to play at a higher level. They drafted him the first pick overall in the first-round pick, so they got to get him higher. I just think, to me, they've got to find a way to get the players that they have to play at a higher level. Right now, they don't play off blocks. The two defensive tackles from Georgia that they were so high on, they need to become better. I mean, everybody has to get better, coaching everywhere. So it's not fatal. I mean, it's week 2, so it's certainly not fatal. But here's the thing that's really going to make you upset, Mike, is the fact that they've only played on average 26 minutes of football defensively, and they've given up 800 yards.
Big number there.
Think about that now. 6 minutes. So the offense is controlling the football for 34 minutes.
Right.
And yet, when the defense is on the field for only 26 minutes, which is typically way less than normal, they still given up 400 yards.
That's unbelievable. Haven't heard that stat yet. I want to get your take on what you're seeing. I know A.J. Brown not being there, but Barkley and Kellen Moore taking over this offense. Do you like what you see, at least on that side of the ball?
Well, look, I've always been I've been critical of Kellen Moore, not because I don't think he's a good offensive play caller, but I think that his ability to manage the game late has always been problematic, and we saw it again. You can say whatever you want about the third down pass being the right call, but what fans don't understand is when you throw the ball that down and it goes incomplete, whether it's a high percentage pass or whatever you want, you've basically given the defensive team you've given the team you're playing against 5 more plays. You just gave them 5 more plays. And everything about the 2-minute drill is not about how much time's left on the clock. It's how many plays are left in the game. If you remember in Super Bowl 52 or 53, Belichick walks over to Brian Flores and Brendan Daly of the Patriots, and he says to both them, look, we've got about 7 to 8 more plays we have to play. Make sure everybody knows the calls. Make sure everybody knows what to do. Make sure everybody understands what we're doing. That's the game. See, the announcers talk about the 2-minute drill and time. If you're a pro football coach and you're an expert of the game, you only talk about how many plays are left. And when Kellen Moore called that pass play, he said to them, here's 5 more plays. And the way their defense was playing on that night, I don't know why you would want to give them 5 more plays.
Great insight there from Michael Lombardi, host of the Morning Line on VSiN. And, Mike, they're playing the Saints this week, 91 points. But you talk about plays, they only threw the ball 16 times in their plays. They're running the ball and scoring 91 points in their first 2 games. So when you look at this Saints team, do you look at them and say, that team, it's sustainable what they're doing?
Well, look, they run the outside zone. They ran it effectively. What was hard for the Eagles to defend last week? The outside zone. So because they couldn't stop the outside zone, it became a real issue. And they're going to have to play better in their defensive front. Here's the other issue. You're going into New Orleans. Now, I know you're playing inside. I get that. But that's a hot and humid environment down there. And if you're not in great condition, you're going to tire out in the fourth quarter. We're going to find out what kind of shape the Eagles' defensive line is. You know, that was a big problem last year. That's why they collapsed the second half of the season. Between Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, they probably gained 100 pounds during the year. They couldn't play. They couldn't run more than 2 plays without coming off the field. Football's a game of conditioning, Mike. You got to be in great shape. I mean, Mainland Regional over there that's going to play tonight, it's going to be broadcast right there in Charlie's. I mean, they run sprints after practice every day because they got to be in shape. Philadelphia, they got to be in shape.
Good breakdown there. Yeah, you know, were they out of gas at the end of that game? Is it a team that makes tough, bad late-game decisions? These were things that the offseason they didn't look at with the head coach, they changed the coordinators. We'll see how that all kind of plays in for Philadelphia. Let's get a couple other quick hits on the NFL, why we have Michael Lombardi here. You watch Dallas. Are they in trouble?
Well, I mean, Dallas has struggled to Dallas won the first game. They didn't really play well even in the first game. I mean, that was because Deshaun Watson couldn't complete the forward pass. So, I think that was an issue. And Dallas' run defense is poor. They put Jordan Phillips on injured reserve this week. Maisie Smith, their first-round pick from a year ago, has got a back issue. He won't play. But neither of them were playing very effectively. Look, Dallas last year won because they were 124 points in first-half point differential. Here's what I'll tell you, Mike. The teams that go to the Super Bowl, whatever the two teams that go to the Super Bowl, you can write this down. Whoever has the highest first-half point differential will be in the Super Bowl. Whoever has the second or third highest point differential will be in the Super Bowl. Playing from in front is the most important stat in football. And that's what Philly did 2 years ago. They were great at doing it. And Dallas last year had a 124-point differential. This year, they are -2. So if they don't play from in front, they're in trouble.
Mike Lombardi with us. I want to get your thoughts on this. This has been a big topic. As a guy who had to make draft choices, what is your take right now on these young quarterbacks and the quarterback play and the way that teams almost, they overdraft these guys? I mean, let's be honest. Some of these guys shouldn't be the third pick, the second pick, but they just do it because they feel like they have to. What is your thoughts on the state of the quarterbacks and the way these organizations are handling them?
Well, I think to me, look, it's a sense of desperation. It's like the great Bruce Springsteen says, sometimes I can't tell my courage from my desperation. I don't think teams are being courageous. I think they're being desperate, and because of their desperation, they're going out and trying to find a guy that they feel like they can win with. But all it does is if you don't get the right guy, all it does is set you back for 2 years. I mean, Tennessee thinks they might have the right guy. Do they? I don't know. I mean, Will Levis is prone to make mistakes. Will Levis couldn't beat out Sean Clifford at Penn State. I'm not sure if you can't beat out Sean Clifford at Penn State, I don't know how you're going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
I think it's crazy right now. I mean, what's going on? I mean, I don't know. Anthony Richardson, I watch him and think this guy has no business being. He might have this physical skill set, but does he have any business starting an NFL game? And you almost feel bad for some of these guys that they're doomed to fail. The whole Bryce Young thing, I mean, should he have played from day one? I don't know how these teams, the pressure that you guys in that GM role have to make sure you make that pick and then that those guys get on the field and play. I think it's a tough spot for everyone to be in.
Yeah, no, it's hard. I mean, but that's what you get paid to do, Mike. I mean, you get paid to win and you get paid to make those calls, and you got to find a way to make it all work. That's why Bill Walsh, when I worked for him in 1984, told me then we're only competing against 8 teams because there's really only 8 that truly understand how to win.
Yeah. Mike Lombardi, host of the Morning Line. You can check that out on the VSiN Network. Check out his GM Shuffle podcast, former GM and 3-time Super Bowl winning NFL executive. The VSiN Sports Betting Network, the first 24/7 broadcast network exclusively for sports betting. You got the Eagles this weekend down there, and the Saints will have the game on 97.3 ESPN. Mike Lombardi, appreciate the time as always, man.
Thank you, Mike.
There's Mike, and, of course, you can check him out on the Morning Line, the new morning show on VSiN. You can also see him as a guest on ESPN's Pat McAfee show, and he was kind enough to join us here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. A lot of breakdowns here that we can really get into. Talking multiple times about the lack of conditioning by the Eagles. Now, that's something that I think we can really ask questions about. Is this team conditioned enough? And that would be something you could say, okay, we talked yesterday about the respect the team has for Sirianni. He holds players accountable. How well prepared he is, Jason Kelce said. All of those things, but is it a little bit of a country club situation there? Do they have enough discipline? We'll discuss that. 609-403-0973. We're at Charlie's in Summers Point. It's now starting to fill up for the dinner crowd. If you want to get down here and get here for a nice Phillies game tonight, get yourself a seat for the Phils at the bar. Bar's filling up. And don't forget, Charlie's has the 6th annual Jack Thomas Memorial Golf Outing. It's at Great Bay Country Club on Monday, October 28th. So make sure you check that out as well. You can stop out right here at the hostess stand, which is basically where we're sitting today. People keep asking me if I could seat them. Maybe after 6, I'll give you a seat. But coming up next, we've got Evan Cohen from Unsportsmanlike at 5 o'clock tonight. So stick around. I want to get his thoughts on the NFL early, quarterback play, Eagles thoughts, and more. Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN.
It's this.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it. Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Mike Gill.
Do I have everybody's attention now?
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
All right, we're live at Charlie's in Summers Point on a Happy Hour Friday. Bud Light specials. Bud Light been a big partner for this Happy Hour Friday. I like to keep it going, man. I like being out on these Fridays. I don't like the fact that everybody else is hanging out, having a couple beers with me, but that's neither here nor there, right? This hour is brought to you by Jersey Cal. They've got 2 locations, Northfield and Brigantine. They're open every day from 12 to 10. Year-round, ice cream is a thing at Jersey Cal. So Lombardi had a lot of things to say. And I like, listen, the question I asked him about can you get a pass rusher in season? I know the answer to the question that he's going to tell me. No, you can't. You got to try to help from within. There was a article over at. Now, I do think, though, that trading in the NFL is a little bit more prevalent than it used to be, right?
Oh, 100%.
So Dan Graziano wrote an article over at ESPN.com about 15 players that could be traded. There was 2 edge rushers. One was Hassan Reddick, and the other one was Azalari from the Giants.
Okay.
So I do think it's far-fetched to make a trade for a guy.
I mean, it's far-fetched, but I think, like you said, remember 2017 when the Eagles acquired Jay Ajayi mid-season, that had an impact on the team. You do have to consider that maybe there is something to that.
Yeah, but running back's a different thing. And look, I do think last year Washington traded 2 pass rushers.
That's correct. Montez Sweat.
And Chase Young.
Yep.
Now, neither one made much of an impact last year because, it's hard to get traded in season. The Eagles traded for a pass rusher in season
Robert Quinn
last year, and that didn't work
a couple years ago. Yeah, it didn't work out.
Yeah. Was that last year or 2 years ago?
I think it was 2 years ago.
All right. Well, it didn't work out 2 years ago, and I don't think it's really conceivable that they can make a trade in season and get a pass rusher. So if you're someone that says, like somebody asked me earlier, well, what about bringing Reddick back? We're so provincial with our players, right? We always want to bring our guy back. Got to bring this guy back.
Familiarity.
Yeah. One of the reasons Reddick is not here is, they didn't think they could sign him. Why would they bring him back if they don't think they can sign him?
I mean, I made the joke with Rob Motti last night. I said it's the reverse draft day, right? Remember draft day? Kevin Costner's like, I want all my picks back. Is Howie going to say, here's all your picks back, Jets? Like, is that how it works?
I also think, last year one of the things that there was some conversation about whether or not he was happy or the others were happy with him in the locker room, in the clubhouse, because some people thought he was freelancing a little bit on the defense, trying to get some sacks so that he can go to the front office and say, hey, I want to get paid because I got 14 sacks.
And remember, Reddick was the same one who was complaining about dropping in coverage in December. Remember we played that audio.
Yeah, well, that's not going to change. Quite frankly, I don't know. Would Vic Fangio want Hassan Reddick in this defense? Now, you would say he'll take pass rush wherever he can get it at this stage of the game. But, look, I don't think that that's going to be something that's fixable unless Bryce Huff is able to turn the corner. And I don't see that happening.
Or, Mike, if you believe when Vic Fangio says, I have to do a better job of coaching these guys, if you would believe that theory.
How much, though, can that change? Seriously, if I say I need to do a better job at coaching, how much can that really change? Can that change significantly, or is that just a minor tweak?
to me, it sounds like a minor tweak because you had all off-season to prepare these guys, right? You were in minicamp, training camp, right?
I will say, we love to react on the sample sizes. We have a 2-game sample size. Now, I think the 2-game sample size was not great, but on the 3rd game, don't you feel a lot differently about the Jets than you did after 2?
100%.
Of course you do.
So do you think maybe that on Sunday we're going to see the best version of the Eagles so far this year?
Not if Chauncey Gardner-Johnson doesn't play. That doesn't make me feel great.
He's questionable.
He is questionable. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live at Charlie's in Summers Point. The 6th annual Jack Thomas Memorial is Monday, October the 28th. You can sign up for that right here in the front at the hostess stand when you walk in. Don't forget Bud Light specials throughout the show. Bars filling up. Phillies tonight, Apple TV Plus. They will have the game on. If you want to watch the Mainland Cherokee game, they'll have that game on here as well. This hour of the show was brought to you by Jersey Cal, a great place for the family to hang out and eat ice cream. Ice cream's a year-round thing at Jersey Cal. They're open every day from noon to 10 at both Northfield and their Brigantine location. Coming up next, Evan Cohen from Unsportsmanlike.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
All right, final hour of the Happy Hour Friday show. If you're getting out and about today, Charlie's in Summers Point's a great spot to start the weekend. They got Bud Light specials. They got all sorts of stuff happening. Phillies game tonight. You can watch the game because if you don't have Apple TV Plus, you're going to need a place to find that game tonight. Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN. We've got 1 hour left to go, including picks, game balls, all that stuff. You can check it all out on our website, 973ESPN.com. And, of course, you can listen weekday morning 6 to 10 a.m. right here on 97.3 ESPN. Unsportsmanlike with Evan Cohen as he joins us right now on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. On a happy hour Friday, we are live on location. We got a packed house here, Evan, and everyone is listening with bated breath for you to be positive about what happened in the game on Monday and then tell us positive things about what we might see on Sunday. Is that possible?
I am positive, Mike, that your head coach is phenomenal that was in the building on Monday night. It's just he's the head coach for next year, not this year, and that's Bill Belichick.
Oh, wow.
That you have a head coach for the future. He just wasn't actually your head coach for the present.
All right, so I'm glad you started there because I was actually going to go down the road of the way the Eagles are kind of set up. All right, they win the game in Brazil, and it's like, okay, maybe they're past their problems from last year. Monday night felt a lot like last year. Do you get the vibes that this thing is just going to be out of control and it's going to be a constant message on shows like yours every Monday morning?
Well, I'll tell you, it's not only Monday morning. There was a moment today that I did not see coming. So let me take the 97.3 audience back to a year ago when we started our show, Unsportsmanlike, on ESPN Radio, as heard on 97.3, as you mentioned. And one Chris Canty, for those who are unfamiliar, played 11 years in the NFL, won a Super Bowl with the Giants, and you know, Mike, was a beast of a defensive lineman, like was really good at that position. A year ago, on our show, he said that he did not think Jalen Hurts was the best player on the Eagles. He did not think Jalen Hurts was even the best Jalen on the Eagles. And he said, watch out for Jalen Carter. There is a chance that this guy becomes the best defender in the entire NFL. And today, CC basically sold almost all of his Jalen Carter stock. So that concerns me as much as anything else. Because if they're not going to have a great defense, if Sirianni is going to be whatever it is that Sirianni is going to be, and Jalen Hurts has to be required to not only be the quarterback of the team, but coach the team, long-winded answer to your question, Mike. Yes, I expect it to be a mess every Monday, and I thought it was going to be different this year.
I think a lot of us did. Now, I would ask you this question. You know, we see 2 games of this team. We feel a lot different about the Jets after a 3rd game than we did after 2 games, right?
Yes.
So with that, 2 games, are we overreacting with what we've seen from the first 2 games, or is there enough evidence to suggest This thing ain't turning around anytime soon.
Okay, so I'm not going to write them off altogether, obviously, right? But I think what we saw in Game 2 is reminiscent, as you astutely pointed out, of what we saw last year. And doesn't that scare you as an Eagles fan a little bit?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that, you look at is, now, I don't know how what your mindset is. Like, I watch a game, if you're watching, let's say, the Sixers play, and Joel Embiid's not playing, we'll get to him a little bit later, but I can't judge them on a night where Joel Embiid doesn't play and say, well, they didn't do this, this, and this. Well, of course, Embiid not being there changes the way that game goes. Does A.J. Brown not being there change the entire narrative of the way that game ended up?
Well, it's an interesting question, and obviously now he's out again, as we expected, for this week against New Orleans. But you know my thoughts on this, and I will let the audience know. I am a person that observes and analyzes to some extent and is a fan of the NFL when teams are not reliant on receivers. That receivers are complementing quarterbacks, not making quarterbacks. So, Mike Gill, what you just said to me is you're not actually sure about Jalen Hurts.
I'll tell you this.
Said to me.
Well, and I think that's fair, though, Evan, is like, I don't think Jalen Hurts is the kind of guy, and by the way, I think very few are, that if you put Jalen Hurts in Tennessee, I don't think the Titans all of a sudden are a playoff team. I think Jalen has exceeded expectations in large part because of the weapons he has. Now, that doesn't mean any stiff can come in and play with great weapons, and that means he's going to be good. It certainly helps, but I think we're all a product of our environment. You get talented quarterbacks that go to lousy situations, and we just perceive them to be lousy. I think Jalen has been put in a great spot, and I don't know that he's an elevator, but I don't think he's also going to make your team. I mean, the guy was the best player in the field in the Super Bowl not too long ago. Do we agree on that?
Yeah, but I actually think he is an elevator. That's what scares me, if I'm an Eagles fan, is that if you're going to sit there and tell me, well, if A.J. Brown's not there, that the combination of Devontae Smith and Dotson and whoever else you want to throw, I mean, they have freaking Saquon Barkley. It's not like they have a schlub back there. He has talent on the offensive side of the ball. Like, if A.J. Brown did not exist as an NFL player and their offense was what it was, okay, without A.J. Brown, are they not still a top-tier offense, in theory?
I think they should. You're right. Well, because two reasons, Evan. They have a really good offensive line. They do have Barkley. Yeah. The problem is, the guy playing opposite of Smith the other night is just not a part of the offense with Brown out. But that being said, but that's weird. Your point is interesting because 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I guess it was now, they made it to the playoffs with a team that had no business making the playoffs. And that's with Sirianni as the coach and Hurts as a very green quarterback. And then the next year they go to the Super Bowl. And it's weird that we're questioning Hurts and Sirianni after the success that they had so early on.
Right. But Sirianni has given us more than enough to question. And he doesn't do himself any favors with some of the quirkiness. Now, some of it may be the who and not the what. For example, Jalen Hurts giving the post-game address to the team and not the head coach, to me, that's more of a who and not the what. I'll explain why.
Yeah.
So, in theory, if let's just rewind the clock. If Mike Tomlin says, you know what, I'm good, I'm going to let Polamalu give the post-game speech, we're not saying a word because of the who, right?
Yeah.
If Belichick says, I'm going to let Brady give the post-game speech, or Matthew Slater, their future Hall of Fame special teamer, we're not saying a word. It's because Sirianni is the potted plants, I don't know what the answers are, all of the 3rd and 3 the other night, because there's so much quirkiness with that guy, when he defers to his quarterback post-game, we start to look at this and we're like, what is happening with this team? But it's not like conceptually that's the worst thing I've ever heard to allow your leaders to do that.
Your explanation is great, though. It's the who, not the what. Because I said the same. It is a little odd, except for, Jalen Hurts. I looked at the game the other night, and, 3rd and 3, Evan was – it was bonkers here on the air for 3 days about that play.
I know.
And then it turned into the 4th down decision to kick the field goal actually almost usurped the 3rd down decision to throw the pass. And I said, look – Hurts' decision at the end of the game infuriates me more than anything because all they needed was a field goal opportunity, and he makes an awful decision. So I bring that up for this reason, Evan Cohen. Does he say, listen, my throw cost us the game, coach. Let me address the team?
Well, but is that what he said?
I don't know, but I'm saying that to me would be the who, not the what.
Okay, here's the thing. All right, not to get too behind the scenes, you and I are similar in some of our career in that at different times in our career, the buck stops with us, right? Not only show, but just different stuff, right? If it's Josh's fault, your producer, that something goes wrong, and he says, I want to address the station, it's your job then in that spot to sit there and say, I appreciate the accountability. I'm going to throw to you. You can speak, but this is my fault because I'm in charge, not you, right?
Yeah.
So if Sirianni wants to sit there and say, listen, Jalen, I appreciate that. You're the leader of this team, and I appreciate you want to take accountability. If you want to jump in at any point, feel free, but this is my job.
Well, and it's a fair point based on the questions around. We get it all the time. What does Sirianni even do? Look, the Eagles put him in a terrible situation. They did him no favors. Do we agree on that?
Well, okay, I want to ask you a big picture question because this is what has been kind of evolving this week on ESPN Radio nationally. Because it happened on our show a little bit, and it happened on Greeny with Hembo, who's a Philadelphia guy, as you know, who loves the Eagles. There seems to be the evolution of conversation here that the Eagles are almost like the modern-day baseball team where the general manager runs it, and there's a puppet master at the manager, and I hate to say it that way. There is a thought now that is prevailing amongst national conversation that Howie Roseman runs this thing, and the reason that Sirianni is there is because he will allow Howie Roseman to run this thing.
It's funny you say that because we have the same conversation about the baseball team because the people can't stand the manager. And we have this conversation all the time about how in baseball the front offices are really kind of making the lineups based on analytics and yada, yada, yada. But you're bringing it to the football side of things, which is interesting because I think a lot of people believe, that Howie had some big cachet. The interesting part is on defense, there's some talk around here now that Roseman's signings, that Fangio wasn't a big fan of them, and that Fangio is kind of putting his foot down. Bryce Huff was the big signing. Devin White, he was the other signing. Neither one of those guys are making any impact. So are we seeing kind of a crossroads here with Roseman, the decision-maker, and Fangio, the curmudgeon-y coach?
Do you realize, Mike, in the 10 minutes that you and I have been talking, or whatever it's been so far, how many tangents we've gone on based on this team through 2 games at potential hypothetical, maybe practical, maybe real problems that stem from whatever happened at the end of last year. So if you ask yourself your original question, do you expect now this year to be like the end of last year? How can you, Mike Gill, ever answer differently other than, yes, I do, based on all of the tangents we have now gone on here?
That's what makes Evan Cohen, by the way, Unsportsmanlike, weekday morning, 6 a.m. on 97.3 ESPN. Evan, that's what makes this market one of the most intriguing markets there ever was, because every night in baseball is Game 7 of the World Series. Every Sunday is the Super Bowl, and every decision that is made or not made gets put under the microscope like it's the Super Bowl, like it's Game 7 of the World Series, like it's Game 7 of the NBA Finals. That's the way the fan base thinks, and that's what makes it so interesting day in and day out, and all the tangents it brings you down based on the fans who react in that way.
No doubt. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to debate about Philly's passion. That's for sure. Atlantic City's passion, I think we know, in that South Jersey, Philadelphia area, we are fully aware that the passion is there, and that's what makes sports in that town great.
So what do you think my listeners were most angry with on Tuesday morning? Barkley for dropping the pass, Moore, who calls the plays, for calling the play, Sirianni for just being Sirianni, the defense for giving up that last drive, or Hurts for making that decision. What do you think my listeners...
let me walk myself through this as I'm thinking it out on the air here. Okay. So,
or if you have another decision that I didn't bring up that you want to interject.
No, I think those. I mean, the early decision not to go for the field goal certainly could be one. But
that's Sirianni. That's Sirianni. He's a part of that.
Right. So as I'm thinking this through, I feel like the Philadelphia fan is not going to blame Kellen Moore. They would blame management or Sirianni for hiring him. It's almost like a tired act with Sirianni. It's so obvious that he's not a big time coach. I actually feel like your audience may have blamed Barkley because that's a catchable ball in that spot, even though he has more drops since 2021 than any running back in the league. Am I right on that? They blame Barkley the most.
Evan, the answer is always the coach. It's always the coach's fault. It's never the player. Not in this town, man. It is always the coach. Sirianni should have never let Kellen Moore call that play. It's his fault. They should have ran it, and then they should have ran it again. That's the mentality.
Well, I agree with that. I'm just trying to guess what they thought. And by the way, it's not very difficult to think about this. In that scenario, on 3rd and 3, and what could have been, let's call it 4th and 1, or maybe who knows, if, let's say, Saquon runs it for 2 yards in that spot on 3rd and 3.
Yep.
It is more important and better for your team to waste time than it is to score points. And I heard Mina Kimes on ESPN on NFL Live bring up this point. I think it was the best point I've heard anybody make about this. In its simplest form, if in theory you fail a 4th down and the Falcons have time, the Falcons' mentality in that spot is to go for 3. They're not thinking about going for a touchdown. By kicking a field goal and giving them the ball back down 6, their mentality is to go for a touchdown. They're not playing for a touchdown down 3, if you think about it. They're playing
That's an excellent
3.
point. That's an excellent point. Yeah, you're right. No one I've heard this week bring up or have even heard. I did not hear Mina say that, but that is a great point. That if you go for it, see, I said I would have ran the ball on 3rd, and then if I really like that pass play and I want to go, because that's always been the thing, is that Sirianni likes to be aggressive. And he went for it early in the game. But then later in the game, when he had a chance to be aggressive, he threw it on 3rd, and then he wasn't aggressive on 4th. That's the whole weird part about it, and it spawned conversations all week that I don't even know how we got to some of them, Evan.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it the way you just laid it out. That in theory, you're better off throwing it on 4th because the clock's going to stop on a turnover on downs anyway. If you don't convert it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good point by you.
All right. Evan Cohen on Sportsmanlike weekday mornings, 6 to 10 right here on 97.3 ESPN. It's funny, the other day, you mentioned, you shouted out our show, and I appreciate that. And our listeners jump in on the text board to let me know, hey, they must be talking about you, and it's because the Eagles and their thing. But you and I first had conversations about the Sixers, who made this decision to sign Joel Embiid today. And it wasn't a Woj bomb, by the way. The post-Woj era began with a Joel Embiid signing, and he signs a 3-year extension. Did they jump the gun on this, or do you say, smart move, Sixers?
Mike, you're going to sit there and tell me that 5 years from now, when Embiid is breaking down now, you anticipate that guy being good 5 years from now? That's what you're going to tell me today, Mike? Be fair.
It raises an eyebrow. There's no question. But I want to throw something that somebody on the show said earlier and see what you think, okay?
Okay.
That it makes sense to sign him now because the television deals are going to make these contracts so ridiculous that his deal will look good.
In theory, yes, but not with that specific player. If you told me the exact same circumstances presented themselves with Tyrese Maxey, I'd say good point.
Okay.
At some point, the culture has to change if the winning doesn't change. And I think that Joel Embiid is the walking culture of this team. He is obviously the extension of all of the losing. And you fought me off on something, and I listened to you before the Olympics when you said you and I were in agreement, Embiid needed to learn how to win because he really didn't know what a winning culture looked like. You said to me, when I said I don't think he should be playing in the Olympics because of health, you said, wait a minute. You're always saying that he needs to learn how to win. How does playing with Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, being with Steve Kerr, Eric Spoelstra, Ty Lue, how does that not help his development of learning how to win? And I said to you, Mike, I said, you know what? You're right. I got to shut up on that. Okay? Here's the thing. He still hasn't won. He stunk in the Olympics outside of the one game against Serbia. He was terrible. And so I don't look at this as a good move, but this is what all of these franchises do in the NBA except for one. There's only one franchise that is willing to say to a player, no, not yet. You need to prove even more. And that one franchise is the one that I believe is the best franchise in the NBA, in the Miami Heat. They sent Jimmy Butler, who's done way more for Miami in terms of winning than Joel Embiid has done for Philadelphia. No, you still got to do more for us to give you what you want. And you know what Jimmy Butler's going to do? Jimmy Butler's going to have the best regular season of his life this year.
Man, we could have so many great conversations and debates. We have so many interesting thoughts that mesh and take us down different rabbit holes. I will say this, okay? The one thing I appreciate about the Sixers and Embiid is the one thing that we hear every offseason. When is Embiid going to ask to be traded? He's the anti-NBA superstar. When everyone else says, I want to be traded, I want the easy way out, I will give him credit for saying, I know I haven't got it done, but I want to do it here. I don't want to go play in another town and try to take a shortcut. I want to do it here, and I give him much respect for that.
And I'm going to tell you, Mike, you're right about what you're saying, but you may look back at the Joel Embiid tenure 10 years from now, as you're celebrating year, 25 at that point on 97.3, that when you are going to sit there and look back at the Embiid tenure, the number one takeaway that you're going to have may just simply be, I wish he would have asked out.
It's possible, but I say this, there's so many nights, Evan, and we'll let you run on this. I say this so many nights when I get to watch, when like the Bulls fans got to see Jordan. I'm not saying he's Jordan, but there's so many games where you're like, I would go and lose 70 games again if I get the chance to watch this guy play. The problem is he doesn't play every night, and that's been the biggest issue with the whole thing. But it is fun to get to see him play all the time. That being said, 5 years from now, it'll be interesting to see a 35-year-old Joel Embiid and what that means. He's Evan Cohen. You can listen to him Monday with reaction to the Eagles and the Saints, the Cowboys and the Ravens. I have a feeling that's going to be on the A-block sheet there as well. And all the NFL games, of course, you can listen to that 6 a.m. right here on 97.3 ESPN. Evan Cohen here on the Sports Bash. All right, man, have a great weekend, buddy. You did a little triple duty today, unless you hit other stations around the country. I know you did double duty this afternoon, but appreciate you as always.
Thank you as always, and honestly, I do shout you out because you've been great to me, great to our show. 97.3 has been great to the show. We get calls from your station all the time, so shout out to Atlantic City, Philadelphia area, and Mike, specifically you, and I really do appreciate it.
All right, thank you, buddy. Evan Cohen, right here on the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN. I do drive around in the morning from time to time and get a chance to hear the guys, and I do watch generally on the television side of things. And I do hear some of the voices from our area calling into his show. They make me smile sometimes. I hear my man Glenn and EHT. I think he moved, though. I think Glenn and EHT moved to Absecon, but I do hear him calling in from time to time and some others. I get a little smile out of that. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. We're live at Charlie's. 15 years of the Sports Bash. He said, I'll be celebrating 25 years at the end of that Joel Embiid contract. It'll actually be 20 years, actually, right? 5 years from now, it'll be 20 years of the Sports Bash. 15 years we're at Charlie's in Summers Point. And don't forget the 6th annual Jack Thomas Memorial Great Bay Country Club. If you want to play, stop at the hostess stand. They got the sign-up forms there. It's Monday, October the 28th. Josh, anything Evan Cohen say catch your attention?
You mean aside from the fact that he mentioned my name in there? I mean,
he knew you.
He just drops names in there, man.
He's very perceptive. Great dude.
His awareness is like, if there's a 1 to 10 scale, Mike, it's 11.
He's a really good guy and smart, good debates. Love having him on. Appreciate him as always.
Really quick,
here
though,
on the Sports Bash.
I did like how he brought up to you. He said, Mike, he said, when you look back, this all started with the Sixers, and now we're with the Eagles. And you could argue that there's one common thread between the two. And you brought up, Mike, everyone questions the coach, and not the players.
It's always.
It's a common thread.
I do want to re-stress this. Embiid, we didn't talk a lot of Embiid today. We're in football season, Phillies and stuff. But I love that Joel Embiid has been the anti-NBA star. When everyone has suggested he will ask out and want to be traded, he hasn't moved or quit on his team or his city. You might not love him. You might not think he's ever going to win a championship. You might not think he's good enough to get it done. You might think he comes up small. But he is a superstar. He's won an MVP. And it'd be easy to say, I failed, and I want to try somewhere else. But much respect to Joel Embiid, where in this day and age, where if you don't play, you transfer. And if you don't get what you want, you ask to be traded. And if the team isn't good enough, you go find a team that is good enough. Every star wants to take the easy route, and Joel Embiid is sticking with the tough route. Will he get it done? I don't know. But much respect to Joel for sticking it out. More Sports Bash coming up next.
You're listening.
This podcast is sponsored by IQ Bar. I've got good news and bad news. Here's the bad news. Most protein bars are packed with sugar and unpronounceable ingredients. The good news? There's a better option. I'm Will, and I created IQ Bar plant protein bars to empower doers like you with clean, delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel. IQ Bars are packed with 12 grams of protein, brain nutrients like magnesium and lion's mane, and zero weird stuff. And right now, you can get 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus free shipping. Try our delicious IQ Bar sampler pack with 7 plant protein bars, 4 hydration mixes, and 4 enhanced coffee sticks. Clean ingredients, amazing taste, and you'll love how you feel. Refuel smarter, hydrate harder, caffeinate larger with IQ Bar.
Go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20 to get 20% off all IQ Bar products plus free shipping. Again, go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20.
With Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Key Acura of Atlantic City. They got some unbeatable lease offers right now through the end of the month. You can drive home in a 2025 Integra for $399 a month with $29.95 down. 2024 RDX all-wheel drive is yours for $393 a month with $49.95 down. Visit Key Acura, Atlantic City, Tilton Road, EHT, the small but friendly dealer. You know, I'm missing driving that MDX. I love that thing, man. It was really, really a nice ride. So if you're in the market, they got great deals right now. Go talk to Rocco. And he'll hash something out for you. He'll find you something. We're live at Charlie's in Summers Point. It's filling up on a Friday night early. 5:30. It's starting to pack up in here already. I love it. I love it being out and about on a Friday, happy hour Friday. If what are you know, the happy hour Fridays, we've kind of got lost in the sauce a little because I've been out on location and I was on vacation a little bit. What is everybody having tonight? Give me something good. Give me, you know what they got at Charlie's here, by the way?
What do they got, Mike?
They got the Bud Light specials for $3. I mean, you can't beat that number. So if you're looking to get a little $3 night on you, bang, they got the Bud Lights there. They do have a Tonewood Fuego in the house, by the way.
Ooh,
just throwing that out there.
That's exciting.
Absolutely. All right, time for today's Big Three, but I do want to read a couple text messages first. Okay?
Yeah, let's hear. It's been a little while since we got to the text board at 609-403-0973.
Mike, if I wasn't in New Orleans, I'd be at Charlie's. That's from your boy Jeff in Ocean City. Mike and Josh, I cannot agree with you guys more about Joel Embiid sticking it out in Philly. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and you know he wants to win for this town. Love that guy for it. Mike Gill for president. Chris in Northfield. Chris, I would probably be a better option for president than what we got going on right now, but I'm not going to run. I'd rather be here talking to you guys. How about that?
I think it's less stress, too. You ever see those presidents when they first get in the office and when they come out, they look like different human beings?
They do, but That's because they don't know how to do the job. You can let me do that job, it'll be a lot different world we're living in.
You're telling me you're going to come out with less gray?
I'm 47, and I don't think do I have a lot of gray?
You have a little salt and pepper in your beard.
In my beard area, starting to get there.
Not the
my
hair.
hair's all right. I think I might be outlasting the. We'll see. Embiid contract is great. He's locked up now, so trade him in capital bold letters. That's not happening. He's not getting traded.
I mean, that
Joel's
guy
not going to be traded.
Is that the same guy who hates Rob Thompson? Is he a Joel Embiid too? That's actually not.
No, but the guy who hates Rob Thompson texted in. He said, maybe that's why Topper doesn't care if anyone hustles to first base. Lots of hammies in jeopardy when players go 100%. I'm old school, though, and my favorite player was Chase Utley. I appreciate the all-out hustle, but I guess the game has changed.
Utley was injured a lot.
Utley was broken down, beat up, because he went so damn hard all the time. You hate to say, don't go hard, don't run hard. Look, you want everybody hustling all the time, but the guy's right. He says, I'm old school, the game has changed. The game has changed. Sadly, the game has changed. I'm not advocating not hustling and it being, not necessary. But in reality, you can't bust it every play for 162. You just can't.
I mean, part of one of the jokes they had on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia was the one episode where Rob McElhenney finally meets Chase Utley, and they asked him, "So Chase, how's your wrist?" And he's like, "What about my wrist?"
Listen, it's a different era. It's a different time. We go back to the 80s, the greenies, the steroid era, then the it's just a different game now. Everything's so different. And I appreciate, look, I'm not going to tell you, do you want guys busting it and hustling? You go try to bust it and hustle at 162 games a year. It's not possible. You got to pick and choose your spot. It's it's funny. I told you yesterday we're going to Iceland.
Yes.
And one of the ideas that we have for Iceland, which is, by the way, very expensive country to go to. Once you're in Iceland, it's expensive as hell over there.
Really?
So, the hotels are very expensive. So my girlfriend did the research to find, so we might drive, a mobile unit all the way around the entire country. But the problem is, I don't drive stick shift. I don't know how. I don't know how to drive stick.
Really?
No. Why would I know how to drive stick? I mean, you say really, as if every car, 50% of the cars today. When's the last time? I don't even remember the last time I saw a manual transmission.
Mike, I mean, that's a rite of passage.
I know, but I just never owned a car that was my mother and my father, that I really remember anyway. I just didn't have a car in my family, so I don't know how to do it. I've told the story before about how I tried to learn how to drive stick one week because my car broke down, and I was going to Syracuse, and I was hell-bent on going to Syracuse. So I took my buddy's car, and he was trying to teach me how to drive stick in 10 minutes.
And what kind of car was this?
He had a pickup truck.
Oh, that's even worse.
So I'm driving this little pickup truck, and I'm shifting around. I'm I got the hang of this thing. Well, the next thing I know, I'm stalled out at a red light in Morgantown, and we didn't have cell phones back then. So I had to get out of the truck.
Go find a payphone?
Go find a payphone and call someone who knew how to drive stick to move the car out of the road because I was holding up the traffic. So she finds she found a mobile RV, but it's stick shift. A lot of them in Iceland are stick shift. And I said, well, I don't know how to drive stick. So I don't want you driving around the whole entire country. It's not fair.
So for me, Mike, when I was younger, I was not allowed to learn. I was not allowed to drive on my own until I learned how to drive a stick shift. Then I was allowed to drive on my own. Even though I already had my license, Mike, my family was like, you gotta real men know how to drive a stick shift. That's the one
I know there is a percentage of the population that feels that driving stick shift is a man thing to do. I couldn't care less if I know how to drive stick. When am I ever going to need that? It's like going to middle school and learning algebra. I will never use that skill in my life. I wasted all of that time in that class. I could have been learning how to do something that would have been useful.
Yeah, it's like when I was my senior year, I ended up I only took pre-calculus because I was trying to prepare myself for college. Then halfway through the class, I was like, this was the biggest waste of time ever.
A lot of like unnecessary math classes I've taken throughout my life.
Just math classes?
A lot of unnecessary classes I've taken throughout my life.
What's Mike's biggest three? Speaking of the big three, what's Mike Bill's biggest three worst classes he ever took?
Any math class. No, algebra. I don't think I've ever used algebra in any walk of my life. Not in my industry, anyway. And at no point in life have I ever said, man, you know what I really used? That algebra that I learned back in, By
the way, Josh from KMA chimed in on the text board, Mike. He says, learning to drive a stick is a rite of passage. It's fun.
I know. I took, geology in college. Not unnecessary, but they make you, right? Like, you have to take some sort of science.
Yeah, you have to take some sort of science, yep.
Yeah, geology, the study of rocks, was not something that I've needed in my post-college life.
I took chemistry in the community. That was mine. That was my lab.
I'm trying to think, what else is, totally unnecessary.
I mean, you were at West Virginia. There probably should have been some interesting classes.
Oh, I took some interesting classes, all right. Techniques of coaching bowling.
What?
Yeah, I had a bowling class in West Virginia. And the class, so West Virginia has the student union has, in the basement of the student union, I say the basement, the bottom underfloor, there is a bar down there and a bowling alley. So the bowling alley and the bar is where the class is.
That sounds cool.
So you would go take the class, and the bar, you would sit at the bar for the class.
Interesting.
Bowling class, yes.
Bowling class.
I took techniques of coaching baseball. I took techniques of coaching basketball. They offered all those classes at West Virginia.
Well, that sounds like
the guy who that taught the baseball class was the baseball coach.
There you go. Lines up for you.
So those are classes I've done something with in my post-collegiate career. Algebra, not so much.
You mentioned the baseball coach. He taught the baseball techniques class. That reminds me when I was in high school, Mike, the soccer coach taught the Spanish class. That was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you get that all the time where the coach of the team has to find some class that he doesn't want to teach generally.
Although I wasn't sure.
There's a small percentage of coaches at the high school level that really want to teach a class. They're generally just give me a class, I'll teach it.
I got to be honest, Mike. I think Mr. Urbina was more interested in teaching the Spanish class than he was coaching the soccer team.
I would imagine so, yeah. That very few high school coaches are I really want to teach.
Mike,
I'm just saying. Although, the ones that do really want to teach are lousy coaches generally.
Well, there you go. You just you probably answered the next question you were wondering. So.
Yeah, exactly. If you got a guy who prefers to teach over coach, that team's probably not so good.
Yeah, you can imagine.
Just saying. All right, what do you got?
I wanted to.
We're gonna have to go a little rapid fire on these.
Yeah, so I had these a combination of nuggets and big three here. Okay, so yep. I wanted to know from you, Mike Gill, which trend, because the Eagles are playing the Saints this weekend, which trend that's on the internet do you think is more realistic? Is it the fact that Derek Carr is only good in presidential election years because his three best years were 2016, 2020, and now the start of 2024? Or do you think the trend that we have gone over 18 straight days with no homicides and almost no crime in New Orleans because the Saints are 2-0?
Jeez. Man. So Derek Carr's only good every 4 years is what the thing is?
So every presidential election, you look at his stats, are his best seasons. It's like a folklore.
Well, I would go with that one only because it has nothing to do with the elections. It just has to do with he's an inconsistent player, and sometimes he's good and sometimes he's bad.
So, for example, in 2016, Mike, was when he finished third in the MVP voting. And then in 2020 was his third most passing touchdowns. And both years he had around 4,000 passing yards. So
yeah. Well, and look, he is a He's a guy that is inconsistent. He's always been inconsistent.
I mean, I just think it's funny that it's like, oh, it's a presidential election year. Derek Carr is going to play well. And, like, you go back and look at his numbers, and you're like, well, I'll be damned. Derek Carr is really good in presidential election years. And those are also the years usually healthy, too. Reading it that way, you will.
Yeah. Well, he's been good so far, but he hasn't thrown. They're not, like, relying on him so far.
No, they haven't had to, but he's been pretty darn efficient. You know, I mean, when you have a 76.9% completion percentage, right?
Helps out when you can run the ball like they can.
By the way, you were asking about wide receivers earlier, Mike. I don't know if you can get your hands on Ronald Dunze, but you might want to play him this week because Keenan Allen is out for their Bears game versus the Colts this weekend.
Dunze out?
No, Keenan Allen is out. Dunze's in.
Did Allen wasn't he hurt last week too, or did he try playing last week?
He tried playing last week, but he's not even on the trip this week. They told him to stay home.
Well, he's getting older, man. That's the problem when you get some of these guys at the end of their careers. We know it. We see it all the time.
Bad news, though, for your significant other's football team, because East Carolina cornerback and top draft prospect Revel Jr., he is done for the year, Mike. Siobhan Revel Jr., he is considered the top quarterback prospect heading into the NFL draft. He tore his ACL in practice this week.
That's a shame. You hate to hear something like that. You know, that's like what happened with Sidney Jones. I mean, his was later in the game. He tore his Achilles. But when you hear guys like that get hurt, and then you wonder what happens to them on draft day for a guy who hasn't played all year.
He was
not going to play most of the year.
So according to ESPN, he was a projected top 15 pick in the NFL draft, and now we'll have to wait and see.
All right. I'm going to have to tell her that.
Does she even know who he is?
She watches. Okay. I'm sure she doesn't know him specifically, but she does pay attention.
And finally, Mike, I wanted to get for you. So did you hear the Justin Herbert story?
I'm assuming not.
So all week, people have been wondering, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? So Justin Herbert spoke to the media today, and he revealed what the injury he has been dealing with is. It's a high ankle sprain, to which Herbert said, thankfully, it's only Friday, when they asked him about if he's going to play on Sunday. Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers have listed him as questionable.
Is that not normal, though? I mean...
Well, the original report was that it was a foot issue. Remember, he was dealing with a couple weeks of the plantar fasciitis issue. But now, apparently, it is not the foot. It's a high ankle sprain.
This sounds like a hockey situation. Why don't they just describe it as lower body?
Lower body. Yeah. So there's some random big threes for you, Mike.
They are some real... That might be the most random three of the big three in the history of the big three.
I aim very high, Mike.
All right. What I got in my head right now is game balls, scores, Phillies tonight. You got Phillies and big game against the Mets here, man. I don't like the way this series started last night, and the Mets are humming right now. Do you want to see the Mets in the playoffs? Do you want to see the Mets sneak in? Not sneak in. They're in right now. They're 2 up on the Braves.
That's correct.
All right, we'll get it. By the way, Phillies game will be on here tonight. It's on Apple Plus, but they will have the game on. And the mainland game will be on in here tonight as well. We're getting ready to wrap up the show. I'll give you my game balls, my picks, and my Bet365 play of the day next.
This podcast is sponsored by IQ Bar. I've got good news and bad news. Here's the bad news. Most protein bars are packed with sugar and unpronounceable ingredients. The good news? There's a better option. I'm Will, and I created IQ Bar plant protein bars to empower doers like you with clean, delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel. IQ bars are packed with 12 grams of protein, brain nutrients like magnesium and lion's mane, and zero weird stuff. And right now, you can get 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus free shipping. Try our delicious IQ Bar sampler pack with 7 plant protein bars, 4 hydration mixes, and 4 enhanced coffee sticks. Clean ingredients, amazing taste, and you'll love how you feel. Refuel smarter, hydrate harder, caffeinate larger with IQ Bar.
Go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20 to get 20% off all IQ Bar products plus free shipping. Again, go to eatiqbar.com and enter code BAR20.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Time for the Bet365 play of the day. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. All right, I got the Saints winning on Sunday. I'm going to go Saints 31, Eagles 20. 31-20.
So you have the Saints covering and the Eagles on the under on the points.
If that's what it is, 31-20 Saints over the Eagles. That's my Bet365 play of the day. Game balls. If I'm looking for a game ball and you're a loss, who stands out? I'm going to go. That's a tough one, huh? I got nobody on defense that stands out in my mind that has a good matchup here. I'll go Nakobe Dean with a lot of tackles because I think they're gonna have a tough day at the office there. So no, I'll go Zach Bond with a lot of tackles. He'll be the guy that stands out on defense. Can you tell I'm not too optimistic about this game?
I can tell.
Yeah, on offense, game ball will be Saquon Barkley as it normally goes.
I was going to ask, do you have an anytime touchdown for the people?
I don't know about that, but I got Barkley over 80 total yards, and I got Kamara over 80 total yards. So you can put those in a parlay, put them together, and let me know on Monday how I did. That's all I got for you today. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. It got really busy in here like the last minute. People are talking to us about 99 bottles and all sorts of stuff, but that's it. Got my BBTs. The Wings here at Charlie's are outstanding. They're going to have the Phillies game on here tonight, the Mainland game on here tonight. It's a great place to watch all the games this weekend. Thanks to Bud Light. It's been a great tour of 15 years of the Sports Bash. We hope to do something on Fridays in the fall. But we do have 99 bottles coming up at Mud Hen in Wildwood the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Have a great weekend, everybody.